My daughter screamed, "Pay your rent or get out," and tossed my life into the mud. She thought she was evicting a broke, useless old man who lived in her basement. She did not know I secretly owned the house she was living in. She did not know I had been testing her character for 3 years. 1 week later, I sold the property for $700,000 cash to a ruthless developer. And when the eviction notice hit her door, she called me screaming in a panic, but my response stunned her into silence. My name is Nelson. I am 68 years old. To the outside world, I look like a retired electrician who drives a rusted pickup truck and wears work boots stained with decades of grease and drywall dust. My own daughter, Vanessa, looks at me and sees a failure. She sees a man who could not keep up with the changing world. But appearances are the most dangerous trap a fool can step into. What Vanessa and her husband Hunter do not know is that I own the building company that built half the suburbs they desperately want to live in. I retired with millions in the bank, but I chose to live simply because I wanted to see if my only child loved me for who I was or for what I could give her. Tonight I got my answer in the pouring rain. It started with a sound that no father ever wants to hear, the sound of a heavy-duty black trash bag hitting the wet pavement. I stood on the porch of the house on Elm Street, a house I bought 10 years ago under an anonymous LLC to give my daughter a roof over her head. The rain was coming down in sheets, cold and unforgiving. It soaked through my flannel shirt, instantly chilling my bones. But the cold was nothing compared to the heat of the anger radiating from the open front door. Vanessa stood there. Her face was twisted in a snarl I barely recognized. She was 28 years old, but in that moment she looked like a stranger. She kicked the second bag of my clothes down the steps. It tumbled and split open, spilling my old work shirts into a puddle of muddy water. "You are a parasite," she screamed. Her voice cracked with the force of her rage. "I am sick of looking at your junk in my basement. I am sick of you eating our food. I am sick of your old truck leaking oil on my driveway." I looked at her calmly. I did not raise my voice. I wiped the rain from my eyes and simply asked Vanessa. We had an agreement. I fix the house, I pay for the utilities, and I stay in the basement suite. I have never missed a utility payment. She laughed. It was a cruel, sharp sound. Utilities. You think paying the electric bill covers the embarrassment of having you here? We are trying to elevate our status, Dad. We have friends coming over. We have Hunter's parents coming to visit next week. Do you know what they will think if they see a dirty old man living like a rat downstairs? Then Hunter stepped out, my son-in-law. He is 30 years old, a white man with a soft face and hands that have never held a shovel in their life. He leaned against the door frame, holding his phone up. The red light was blinking. He was recording this. He was live streaming my humiliation to his followers. Hunter smirked and said, "Vanessa is right, Nelson. This is not a charity ward. You want to stay fine. The rent is now $1,500 a month. Cash. Up front. Starting tonight." I looked at him. $1,500 for a basement suite that I built with my own hands. I installed the wiring, I hung the drywall, I paid for the materials. And now this boy who has not paid his share of the mortgage in 3 months was demanding rent from me. "I do not have $1,500 on me, Hunter," I said quietly. "You know my pension check does not come until the 1st. Hunter shrugged, panning the camera to show my soaked clothes on the lawn. "Then I guess you are sleeping on the street, old man. Look, it is nothing personal. We just cannot afford to carry dead weight anymore. My parents are coming to stay for a few months and they need the space. They are people of quality, Nelson. They are not used to this atmosphere." He waved his hand at me as if I were a bad smell. The racism was subtle, wrapped in words like quality and atmosphere, but I felt it sting just as sharply as a slap. He looked at me, a black man who had worked hard every day of his life and saw only a burden. He saw a stereotype. He did not see the man who paid for his wedding reception because his own parents were too stingy to contribute a dime. Vanessa crossed her arms. "You heard him, Dad. Pay the $1,500 right now or get your trash off my property. You have 1 hour before I call the cops and have you removed for trespassing." I looked at my daughter. I looked for a trace of the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders. I looked for the teenager I taught to drive. I looked for the young woman I walked down the aisle 3 years ago. She was gone, consumed by greed and the desperate need to impress a husband who did not respect her or her heritage. I took a deep breath. The rain ran down my face, tasting of salt and iron. I did not beg. I did not cry. I did not ask for mercy. "Okay," I said. My voice was steady. It cut through the sound of the rain. Vanessa blinked. She expected a fight. She expected me to plead. She did not expect acceptance. "Okay," she repeated. "Yes," I said. I bent down and picked up the wet trash bag. I tied the knot on the torn one to keep my shirts from falling out. "I understand perfectly. This is your house. These are your rules. I will not be a burden to you any longer." Hunter laughed, zooming in on my face with his phone. "Look at that, guys. Finally taking some personal responsibility. It is about time." I walked past them without looking back. I carried my bags to my 1995 Ford pickup truck parked on the street. It was rusted around the wheel wells and the paint was fading, but the engine was impeccable. I threw my bags into the bed of the truck. I climbed into the cab and started the engine. It roared to life with a reliable growl. As I pulled away, I saw them standing on the porch. Vanessa looked confused, hugging her arms against the cold, damp air. Hunter was still filming, waving goodbye mockingly. They thought they had won. They thought they had just cut off a leech. They had no idea they had just severed their only lifeline. I drove through the rain. I did not go to my friend Sam's house, though I knew he would take me in. I did not go to a shelter. I drove toward the city center. The skyline glowed against the dark clouds. I pulled my old truck up to the valet stand of the Grand Imperial Hotel. It is the most expensive hotel in the city, the kind of place where senators and tech moguls stay. The valet, a young man named Kevin, looked at my truck with hesitation. He started to wave me off, thinking I was a delivery driver or a lost contractor. But then he saw my face. I rolled down the window. "Good evening, Kevin," I said. His eyes widened. "Mr. Nelson, I haven't seen you in months." I smiled tiredly. "I have been busy, Kevin. Keep her close for me." I handed him a $20 bill. He took it and opened my door with the same respect he would show a man in a Ferrari. He knew. The staff here knew. I had lived in this hotel for 3 months while my house was being renovated 5 years ago. They knew I tipped well and demanded nothing but privacy. I walked into the lobby. The marble floors shone under the crystal chandeliers. The air smelled of expensive perfume and fresh lilies. I was soaking wet. My boots squeaked on the floor. My flannel shirt was heavy with water. People stared. A woman in a fur coat wrinkled her nose and pulled her purse closer. A businessman in a sharp suit whispered something to his colleague and laughed. They saw a homeless man who had wandered in from the storm. They did not know that the building we were standing in was wired by my company 20 years ago. I walked straight to the front desk. The manager, Mr. Sterling, saw me approaching. He did not call security. He came out from behind the counter with his arms open. "Mr. Nelson," he said, ignoring my wet clothes as he shook my hand. "Welcome back. The usual suite." "The presidential suite, please," I said. "And I will need room service, a steak, medium rare, and a bottle of the vintage red wine I like." "Of course, sir. Right away." I reached into my boot. I pulled out the inner sole. Underneath it, wrapped in plastic, was a thin silver key and a black titanium credit card. I handed him the card. "Run it for a week," I said. I took the elevator up to the top floor. The suite was bigger than the entire house I had just been kicked out of. I stripped off my wet clothes and threw them in the trash. I stood under the hot water of the rainfall shower and washed away the mud and the humiliation. I wrapped myself in a plush white robe and sat in the leather armchair overlooking the city lights. I poured a glass of wine. My hands were finally steady. I picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had not called in a long time. It rang twice. Sullivan, a voice answered. Sharp. Alert. It was my lawyer. It was 8 in the evening, but Sullivan always answered my calls. "It is Nelson," I said. "Nelson, I was just looking at your portfolio. To what do I owe the pleasure?" I looked out at the rain hitting the glass. I thought of Vanessa's face as she screamed at me. I thought of Hunter's mocking laugh. "Execute the sell clause," I said. There was a pause on the line. "For the Elm Street property. The one your daughter lives in." "Yes," I said. "Sell it." Nelson Sullivan said, his voice cautious. "You know the market is hot. If we list it, it will go fast. But are you sure that is Vanessa's home? You set up the Blue Horizon LLC specifically so she could live there without knowing you were the landlord. You wanted to protect her dignity." She does not have any dignity left to protect, I replied. She threw me out in the rain tonight, Sullivan. She demanded rent from her own father, and when I could not pay, she tossed me out like garbage. I heard the sound of a pen tapping against a desk. I see. Do you want to give her notice? The standard 30 days. No, I said. I want it sold to a cash buyer. Tonight. I know you have investors on your speed dial who will buy anything in that neighborhood. I do, Sullivan admitted. I have a developer who has been eyeing that block for months. He is aggressive. He buys properties to flip them or tear them down. He doesn't care about tenants. Perfect, I said. What is the price we can get? $700,000. Cash. Close in 48 hours. Do it, I said. And Sullivan, yes. Make sure the new owner knows the property comes with non-paying squatters. Tell him he has my permission to use whatever legal means necessary to clear the building. I want the sale finalized before the weekend. Consider it done, Sullivan said. I will draft the papers now. I will courier them to you for signature in the morning. Where are you? I am at the Grand Imperial, I said. Enjoy your stay, Nelson. I hung up the phone. I took a sip of the wine. It tasted rich and complex. A stark contrast to the cheap instant coffee I had been drinking in that basement for 3 years to save money. I looked at the phone again. I opened the gallery. I looked at a photo of Vanessa from her graduation. She looked so happy, so innocent. I wondered where I had gone wrong. I wondered if I had loved her too much, shielded her too much. I had created a monster by never letting her feel the cold wind of reality. Well, the shelter was gone now. The winter was coming. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. Don't think you can come crawling back tomorrow. We changed the locks. If you want your other box of junk, it's on the curb. Hope the rain stops. I stared at the message. She was not just cruel. She was confident. She truly believed she held all the cards. She believed she was the queen of the castle, finally rid of the old servant. I typed a reply, then deleted it. No. Words were wasted on her. She needed a lesson that words could not teach. I turned off my phone. I cut into my steak. I ate alone in the silence of the luxury suite while miles away my daughter and her husband slept in a master bedroom that they thought they owned inside a house that was already being sold out from under their feet. The game had changed, and they did not even know the rules had been rewritten. I sat at the mahogany desk in the presidential suite of the Grand Imperial Hotel. The morning sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. Before me lay a stack of crisp white legal documents that Sullivan had couriered over just 20 minutes ago. The smell of fresh ink was sharp and satisfying. I picked up my fountain pen, a heavy Mont Blanc that I had bought for myself 30 years ago when my company landed its first $1 million contract. I rolled the pen between my fingers, feeling its weight. On the top page in bold black letters was the name of the owner of the property at 45 Elm Street. It did not say Nelson, it said Blue Horizon LLC. 10 years ago, when Vanessa graduated college with a degree she had no intention of using and a boyfriend who had no intention of working, I knew I had to intervene. I could not just give her a house. If I gave her a house, she would treat it like she treated everything else I gave her. She would neglect it. She would take it for granted. So I created Blue Horizon. It was a shell company with a registered agent in another state and a P.O. box that forwarded mail directly to my accountant. I wanted to teach my daughter the value of responsibility. I wanted her to know what it felt like to pay a mortgage even if she thought it was rent. I wanted her to fear a landlord because she clearly did not respect a father. For a decade, they sent their checks to a faceless corporation. When the water heater broke, they called a service line that I paid for. When the roof leaked, they emailed a generic support address that I monitored. They feared Blue Horizon. They respected Blue Horizon. They thought Blue Horizon was a massive conglomerate run by ruthless white businessmen who would evict them if they were a day late. They had no idea that the ruthless businessman was the old black man living in their basement fixing the very leaks they complained about. I looked at the deed. It was almost funny. They had kicked me out of my own house because I could not pay $1,500 in rent to them. They did not know that their entire existence in that house was subsidized by me. I charged them half the market rate. I covered the property taxes. I paid the insurance, and in return, they treated me like a parasite. I had built a fortress to protect them from the world, and they had thrown me over the walls into the moat. The pen hovered over the signature line. This was the transfer of ownership. Sullivan had found a buyer faster than I expected, a company called Ironclad Developments. I knew them. They were sharks. They bought properties for cash, gutted them, and built luxury condos. They did not care about tenants' rights. They did not care about sob stories. They had a legal team that could evict a saint from a church in under 24 hours. Just as the nib of my pen touched the paper, my phone buzzed on the marble coaster. I looked at the screen. It was Vanessa. I let it ring 3 times. I wanted her to sweat. I wanted her to wonder if I was lying in a ditch somewhere. Then I picked it up and put it on speaker. "Hello," I said. My voice was raspy. I made sure to sound tired and defeated. Daddy Vanessa's voice came through the speaker. It was high-pitched and trembling. It was the voice she used when she was 6 years old and wanted a pony. It was the voice she used when she was 16 and crashed my car. It was the voice of manipulation. "Daddy, where are you? We have been so worried. It rained all night. Are you okay?" I leaned back in my leather chair. A waiter knocked softly on the door and entered with a silver cart. He placed a plate in front of me. On it was a Wagyu steak sandwich with truffle fries. The aroma filled the room. I took a sip of sparkling water. "I am fine, Vanessa," I said. "I found a dry spot. Why are you calling? Did you find another bag of my trash to throw out?" "No, Daddy. Please do not say that," she sobbed. The tears sounded forced. I could hear the intake of breath she used to stage them. "We were just so stressed last night. Hunter has been under so much pressure with his parents coming. We did not mean what we said. We love you. You know we love you." I took a bite of a truffle fry. It was perfectly salted. "You love me," I repeated flatly. "Is that why you demanded $1,500 from a pensioner?" "We are in trouble, Dad." She dropped the act for a second, her voice dropping to a frantic whisper. "The landlord, Blue Horizon. They sent us a notice this morning. They are raising the rent. They say we are 3 months behind. They are threatening legal action." I smiled. Sullivan worked fast. He must have sent a demand letter as a prelude to the sale. "And what do you want me to do about it?" I asked. "I am homeless, remember." "We need money, Dad," she said. "Hunter says you must have some savings. You worked for 40 years. You have your pension. If you give us $5,000, we can pay the back rent. You can come home. You can have the basement back. We will not charge you rent for 2 months. 2 months. She was offering me my own basement for 2 months in exchange for $5,000. I heard a rustling sound on the other end of the line. A hand covered the phone, but not completely. I heard Hunter's voice. It was a hiss, low and urgent. "Ask him about the cash," Hunter whispered. "The old man does not use banks. He probably has a stash in his boot or sewn into that ugly coat. Tell him we need it for the baby." I froze. Baby. There was no baby. Vanessa had been adamant about not having children until they were rich. They were lying to me. They were inventing a grandchild to open my wallet. "Hunter, tell him about the baby." Hunter hissed again. Daddy Vanessa came back on the line. "There is something else. I did not want to tell you like this, but I am pregnant. You are going to be a grandfather. We cannot be evicted, not with a baby on the way. Please, if you have any cash hidden away, anything at all, we need it." I looked at the steak sandwich. I looked at the crystal glass of water. I looked at the luxury suite that cost more per night than they paid in rent for 3 months. They thought I was a senile old fool who stuffed cash in his mattress. They thought they could play on my emotions with a non-existent child. It broke something in me. The last thread of guilt I felt for selling the house snapped. I listened to her fake sobbing for another moment. I took a slow drink of water. I imagined Hunter leaning over her shoulder, his greedy eyes wide, waiting for the payout. "Vanessa," I said. My voice was steady. "I do not have $5,000. "What?" Her voice turned sharp instantly. The tears evaporated. "What do you mean you worked union jobs? You have to have money." "I spent it," I said. "Spent it on what you live like a hobo. I spent it on a bus ticket. I lied. I am at the Greyhound station. I am going down south. I have a cousin in Alabama. I bought a one-way ticket. It cost me my last $100. Silence. Absolute silence on the line. Then I heard Hunter curse in the background. "He is useless," Hunter spat. "Hang up." But Daddy Vanessa said, desperation creeping in for real this time. "You can't leave. If you leave, who is going to help us? We can't pay this. They will kick us out." "That sounds like a problem for the tenants," I said. "I am not a tenant anymore. You made sure of that." "But the house," she screamed. "It is our home. It is a rental." "Vanessa," I said, "and if you cannot pay the landlord, you get out. Isn't that what you told me last night? Pay or get out." "Those were your words." Daddy, wait, do not hang up. We can sell your truck. Where is the truck? Come back and we can sell the truck. I laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. My truck is coming with me. Goodbye, Vanessa. Good luck with the baby. I ended the call. I turned the phone off and placed it face down on the desk. I picked up the Mont Blanc pen again. The ink was still wet on the nib. I looked at the document. Sale agreement. Seller Blue Horizon LLC. Buyer Ironclad Developments. Price $700,000. Cash. As is. Immediate possession. I thought about the lies. I thought about the racism. I thought about the fake pregnancy. I thought about Hunter searching my old coats for cash while I slept. I pressed the pen to the paper. The ink flowed smoothly, black and permanent. I signed my name, Nelson King, managing member. It was done. The house was gone. In 48 hours, Ironclad Developments would show up with a team of lawyers and a locksmith. They would realize the property was occupied by squatters who had no lease, no money, and no rights. I took a bite of my sandwich. It was the best meal I had tasted in years. I watched the city below me, busy and indifferent. My daughter was right about one thing. It was time to elevate my status. I was done being the basement dweller. I was the landlord. And I had just closed the deal of a lifetime. I sat in the climate-controlled silence of my hotel suite and opened my laptop. I had installed a high-definition security system in the Elm Street house 3 years ago. I told Vanessa it was to lower their insurance premiums. The truth was, I wanted to make sure the property I owned was safe. Now those cameras were my window into the invasion that was taking place in my former home. A black Lincoln Navigator pulled into the driveway just hours after I had left. It was the Harringtons. Hunter's parents had arrived from Connecticut. They did not just arrive, they invaded. Preston and Linda Harrington stepped out of the vehicle with the air of royalty, inspecting a peasant village. They were followed by the driver, who began unloading luggage. It was obscene. There were 10 suitcases, 10 massive hard-shell cases for a 2-month stay. They filled the driveway. They blocked the path to the front door. I watched on the screen as Vanessa ran out to greet them. She had changed her clothes. She was wearing a dress I knew she could not afford and heels that sank into the wet grass. She looked desperate to please. She reached out to hug Linda Harrington, but the older woman stiffened and offered a cold cheek. Linda looked around the neighborhood with a wrinkled nose. She looked at the small, well-kept lawns and the modest porches, and her disdain was palpable. "This is quaint," Linda said. The microphone on the porch camera picked up her voice clearly. It was a voice that sounded like grinding glass. Preston Harrington ignored Vanessa completely. He walked past her and stood in the doorway looking into the living room. Hunter rushed out, wiping his hands on his pants. He looked terrified. "Welcome home," Hunter said. His voice cracked. Preston grunted. "It is smaller than the pictures, son. Much smaller." "Where are we putting all this luggage? We have the master suite ready for you," Vanessa said eagerly. She grabbed a heavy bag, trying to be helpful. Linda Harrington stopped her with a sharp gesture. "Don't drag it on the concrete, Vanessa. That represents a Louis Vuitton collection worth more than your car. Let the driver handle it." They marched inside. I switched the camera feed to the living room. They stood in the center of the space I had renovated with my own hands. Linda ran a finger over the fireplace mantel. She looked at her finger for dust. "There is a smell here," Linda announced. She sniffed the air theatrically. "It smells like old sweat, like manual labor. Is that person still living here?" She meant me. She was talking about my scent, the scent of the man who built the floor she was standing on. "He is gone," Hunter said quickly. "We cleared him out. The basement is empty. We're going to fumigate tomorrow." Fumigate. "My own son-in-law spoke about me as if I were an infestation of termites," Good Preston said. "We need the space. We will take the master bedroom upstairs. You two can take the guest room or the study." Vanessa froze. The master bedroom was her sanctuary. It was the one place she felt like she had made it. But Hunter did not hesitate. "Of course, Dad," Hunter said. "We already moved our things out. It is all yours." I watched as they marched upstairs. They did not ask. They took. They displaced my daughter in her own home within 5 minutes of arriving. Vanessa stood at the bottom of the stairs looking small and defeated, but she did not say a word. She had traded her father's dignity for the acceptance of these people, and now she was finding out that the price of admission was her own self-respect. I poured myself a glass of water and watched as the driver hauled the 10 suitcases up the stairs, scratching the hardwood banister I had sanded by hand. They were settling in. They thought they were checking into a resort. They did not know they had just boarded a sinking ship. Dinner that night was a piece of theater that would have been funny if it were not so tragic. I watched from the dining room camera. Hunter had set the table with the good china, the set I bought Vanessa for her wedding. He had opened a bottle of wine that cost more than my weekly grocery budget. The conversation started with the usual boasting. Preston talked about his golf game. Linda talked about the incompetence of her housekeeper in Connecticut. Vanessa ran back and forth from the kitchen serving the food. She was not eating with them. She was serving them. She brought out a roast chicken and vegetables. She poured the wine. She refilled the water glasses. "Sit down, girl," Preston finally barked. "You are making me dizzy hovering like that." Vanessa sat on the edge of her chair. She looked exhausted. "So, son," Preston said, cutting into the chicken, "you finally bought the place. I have to say I was surprised. I did not think you had the credit score for a mortgage in this zip code." Hunter took a large gulp of wine. He set the glass down too hard. "It was a great deal, Dad." Hunter lied. His face was flushed. "The market was soft. I swooped in. I negotiated hard. We closed last month." Vanessa looked down at her plate. She knew it was a lie. She knew they were 3 months behind on rent to a company they thought was a faceless corporation. But she said nothing. She let him lie because the lie was the only thing holding their image together. "You own it outright?" Linda asked suspiciously. "Or is the bank still holding the leash?" "We have a mortgage," Hunter said quickly. "But the terms are excellent. I am actually thinking of refinancing soon to pull some equity out for renovations. We want to open up the kitchen, maybe add a sunroom." I almost laughed out loud in my hotel room. Equity. He had negative equity. He had debt. He had an eviction notice being drafted at that very moment. But he sat there playing the big shot, calling the shots on a house he did not own. "And what about the basement?" Preston asked. "What are you going to do with that hole where the old man lived?" Hunter waved his hand dismissively. "Storage mostly. Maybe a wine cellar or a home gym. It needs to be gutted first. It smells like cheap tobacco and despair down there." Vanessa flinched. "I do not smoke. I never have." The smell he was talking about was the smell of cedar wood from my carving projects. "Make sure you bleach it," Linda advised. "You never know what kind of diseases old people carry, especially when they have been living in squalor." "Vanessa, clear these plates. The chicken was dry. Next time use more butter." Vanessa stood up immediately. "Yes, Linda, I am sorry. I will make coffee." She began clearing the table. My daughter, who had screamed at me for not paying $1,500, was now acting as an unpaid waitress for people who insulted her cooking and her home. She was desperate for their approval. She wanted to be one of them so badly that she was willing to erase herself completely. Hunter leaned back in his chair, looking satisfied. He had successfully sold the lie. He was the king of his castle. He had his parents impressed. He had his wife serving him. He felt powerful. He did not know that outside on the street a white van from Blue Horizon LLC had just pulled up. He did not know that a man was walking across the lawn carrying a wooden stake and a hammer. The next morning the sun rose bright and clear over Elm Street. The storm had passed, leaving the air crisp and fresh. I woke up early in the hotel suite. I ordered coffee and opened the laptop. I wanted to see the morning show. The camera feed for the front yard showed a peaceful suburban scene. The grass was green. The birds were singing. And right in the middle of the lawn, planted deep into the soft earth, was a sign. It was 4 feet wide and 3 feet tall. It was bright red and white. It said "For Sale" in massive block letters. Underneath it said, "Cash buyers only. Immediate possession. Contact Ironclad Developments." It was aggressive. It was ugly. It was perfect. At 8 in the morning, Hunter walked out the front door in his bathrobe to get the newspaper. He stretched his arms, yawning. He looked at the sky. Then he looked down. He froze. I zoomed in on his face. The color drained from his skin instantly. He looked like he had seen a ghost. He dropped the newspaper. He ran down the steps, his bare feet splashing in the wet grass. He grabbed the sign. He tried to pull it up, but the ground was heavy with clay and the stake was driven deep. He pulled and grunted. He looked back at the house, terrified that his parents would wake up and look out the window. If Preston Harrington saw a "For Sale" sign on the house his son claimed to own, the game would be over. Hunter knew this. He began to kick the sign. He clawed at the dirt with his fingernails. "What is this?" he screamed. "Who did this?" I picked up my cell phone. I dialed the local police station non-emergency line. I spoke with the calm authority of a property owner protecting his investment. "Hello," I said. "I am the owner of the property at 45 Elm Street. I am watching my security feed, and there is a man in the front yard vandalizing my property. He is destroying a real estate sign." He looks deranged. I would like to press charges. The dispatcher took the details. We have a unit nearby, sir. We will send someone over immediately. I watched the screen. Hunter was now trying to break the wooden post over his knee. He was sweating. He was cursing. He looked toward the upstairs window where his parents were sleeping. Please, he whimpered. Not now. Not today. He did not know who he was praying to, but the answer was coming in the form of a squad car turning the corner with its lights flashing silently. The show was just beginning. The dinner table was set with a tension so thick it could have been cut with the steak knives Hunter was using to saw through a piece of dry roast beef. It was 7 in the evening. The police officer from the morning had left after giving Hunter a warning about wasting law enforcement resources, but the humiliation still hung in the air like smoke. Preston and Linda Harrington were eating in silence. Their eyes darted around the room as if they expected the walls to collapse. They were suspicious. They had seen the police cruiser. They had seen their son sweating and manic in the front yard. But Hunter had spun a lie about a prank by neighborhood kids, and they had chosen to believe him because the alternative was too painful to accept. Vanessa was in the kitchen refilling the wine glasses for the 3rd time. She was trying to drown their doubts in expensive Cabernet. Then the front door unlocked. It was not a knock. It was not a doorbell. It was the distinct mechanical click of a deadbolt turning. The sound echoed through the silent house like a gunshot. Hunter froze with his fork halfway to his mouth. Preston looked up, his eyebrows furrowing in confusion. The door swung open. The cool evening air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and exhaust fumes. A man stepped into the foyer. He was tall and wore a suit that cost more than Hunter's car. He held a clipboard in one hand and a ring of keys in the other. Behind him stood a young couple. They looked wealthy. They looked judgmental. They looked like they were ready to buy the world and evict everyone in it. Hunter dropped his fork. It clattered against the fine china. "Who are you?" Hunter shouted. He stood up his chair, scraping violently against the floor. "Get out of my house!" The man in the suit did not flinch. He did not apologize. He stepped further into the room, and the young couple followed him, their eyes scanning the crown molding and the hardwood floors with predatory interest. "I am Mr. Sharp," the agent replied. His voice was calm and professional. "I am the listing broker for this property. I have a showing scheduled for 7:15. We are here to inspect the assets." Showing Hunter sputtered. His face turned a deep shade of crimson. "There is no showing. I own this house. Get out before I call the police." Mr. Sharp looked at his clipboard. He flipped a page with a dismissive snap of his wrist. He pulled out a document. It was a lease agreement. It was the lease agreement Hunter had signed 3 years ago. "Sir, Mr. Sharp," said his voice, raising just enough to silence the room. "According to the records of Blue Horizon LLC, you are the tenant. You are not the owner. Furthermore, you are currently 3 months in arrears on your rent payments. The owner has exercised his right to sell the property. Your lease contains a clause allowing for immediate showings in the event of default. We are coming in." The silence that followed was absolute. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hovering at the top of its arc. Preston Harrington slowly placed his napkin on the table. He stood up. He was a large man, and he looked at his son with eyes that were suddenly devoid of all warmth. Tenant Preston repeated. The word tasted like poison in his mouth. "You told us you bought this house. You told us you refinanced." Hunter began to stammer. "Dad, listen. It is complicated. It is a rent-to-own scheme. It is a creative financing deal. I can explain." Linda Harrington let out a sound that was half gasp and half shriek. She looked at Vanessa, who was standing in the kitchen doorway holding a bottle of wine like a weapon. Linda's face twisted into a mask of pure disgust. "You lied to us," Linda hissed. She stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "You brought us to a rental that you do not even pay for. We are staying in a house that is being repossessed." Mr. Sharp ignored the family drama. He gestured to the young couple. "As you can see, the living room has excellent natural light, although the current decor is a bit dated," Sharp said, walking right past Hunter. "The floors are original hardwood. The tenant has neglected the finish, but it can be restored." The young woman with him wrinkled her nose. She looked at Hunter and his parents as if they were part of the furniture that needed to be thrown out. "Does it come with the squatters?" she asked with a cruel laugh. Hunter lunged forward. "Get out!" he screamed. He grabbed Mr. Sharp's arm. Mr. Sharp stopped. He looked at Hunter's hand on his sleeve. Then he looked at Hunter. "If you touch me again, I will have you removed by the sheriff tonight," Sharp said. His voice was ice cold. "You have 72 hours to vacate the premises once the sale closes. I suggest you spend your time packing instead of assaulting real estate professionals." Hunter released him. He fell back against the wall, defeated. The truth was out. The lie he had built his entire life around had crumbled in under 60 seconds. Linda Harrington turned to Vanessa. Her eyes were full of venom. "This is your doing," she spat. "You and your low-class family. I knew Hunter was making a mistake marrying you. I knew it. You dragged him down. You promised him a life he could not afford, and now look at us. We are being humiliated by a landlord." Vanessa dropped the wine bottle. It shattered on the floor, spraying red liquid across the white baseboards. She did not cry. She looked at her husband, waiting for him to defend her, waiting for him to tell his mother that it was his lie and his debt. Hunter said nothing. He looked at the floor, unable to meet anyone's gaze. He was a coward. He had always been a coward. Preston Harrington grabbed his wife's arm. "Go upstairs, Linda," he commanded. "Pack the bags. We are leaving. I will not spend another minute under this roof." "But Preston, we have nowhere to go," Linda wailed. "We will go to a hotel," Preston roared. "A hotel I pay for. A hotel that actually belongs to the people who run it. Move!" They marched past Vanessa, pushing her aside as if she were a piece of trash. The young couple watched it all with amusement, snapping pictures of the living room while the family imploded. I sat in the driver's seat of a rented black sedan parked directly across the street. The windows were tinted dark enough that no one could see in, but I could see out perfectly. I held a pair of high-powered binoculars to my eyes. The living room curtains were open. They never closed them. They wanted the world to see their perfect life. Now the world was seeing their perfect disaster. I watched Mr. Sharp enter. I saw Hunter's explosion. I saw the way his shoulders slumped when the paperwork came out. I saw Preston Harrington shouting. I saw the wine bottle shatter. I reached into the passenger seat and grabbed a bag of popcorn. I tossed a kernel into my mouth and chewed slowly. It was salty and satisfying. This was better than any movie. This was reality. This was the consequence of arrogance meeting the brick wall of truth. I watched as Preston and Linda dragged their 10 suitcases down the stairs just 20 minutes later. They did not wait for a driver. They hauled them out the front door themselves, struggling with the weight. They threw the bags into the back of their Navigator. Hunter ran out after them, begging and pleading. He grabbed his mother's arm. She pulled away from him as if he were burning. Preston got into the driver's seat and started the engine. He did not look back. He peeled out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the pavement. He left his son standing in the dark alone and exposed. Hunter stood there for a long time. He looked at the house. He looked at the for sale sign that was still lying in the grass where he had failed to destroy it. Then he looked up at the sky and screamed. It was a scream of frustration. It was a scream of a man who realized the world did not owe him a living. I lowered the binoculars. I felt a deep sense of calm settle over me. For 3 years I had lived in their basement, listening to their footsteps above my head, listening to them spend my money and mock my existence. I had been the ghost in the machine. Now I was the machine. Vanessa came out onto the porch. She was crying now. She sat on the steps, hugging her knees. She looked like a child who had lost her way. Part of me wanted to feel sorry for her. Part of me wanted to get out of the car and comfort her. But then I remembered the rain. I remembered the trash bags. I remembered her voice telling me to pay or get out. She had made her choice. She had chosen the illusion over the father. Now the illusion was gone, and she was left with nothing but the husband she deserved. I started the car. The engine purred softly. I put it in gear and pulled away from the curb, driving slowly past the house. Neither of them looked up. They were too busy staring at the ruins of their ego. I drove back toward the city lights. The night was young, and I had a meeting with the developers in the morning to finalize the kill. The house was just the beginning. I had taken away their shelter. Now it was time to take away their excuses. The sound of a staple gun hitting solid wood is violent. It sounds like a gunshot when it cracks through the morning silence. At 6 in the morning on Elm Street, the sound echoed off the neighboring houses. Thwack, thwack, thwack. 3 staples drove into the front door of the house my daughter thought was hers. I watched it happen from my laptop screen in the hotel suite. A man in a gray jumpsuit stood on the porch. He did not knock. He did not ring the doorbell. He was not a mailman delivering good news. He was a professional process server hired by Ironclad Developments. He smoothed the paper against the wood. It was neon orange. It was impossible to miss. It screamed danger. The man turned and walked back to his van. He did not look back. He did not care about the lives inside. He had a job to do, and he had done it. Inside the house, the noise woke Hunter. I saw the lights flicker on in the living room where he and Vanessa were sleeping on an air mattress because his parents had occupied the master bedroom upstairs. Hunter stumbled to the door, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He opened it and stared at the orange paper. He ripped it down. He read it. His hands started to shake. I zoomed in on the document through the high-definition lens of the porch camera. Even from miles away, the bold black letters were legible. Notice to vacate, 72 hours. Writ of possession, sheriff enforcement scheduled. It was not a warning. It was a countdown. Ironclad Developments moved fast. They had filed the paperwork the second the title transferred. They treated Hunter and Vanessa exactly as what they were, squatters with no lease and no rights. Hunter slammed the door. I could not see him anymore, but I could hear him. The audio feed from the living room camera was crystal clear. "Vanessa!" he screamed. "Wake up! Get up now!" Vanessa groaned. "What is it, Hunter? It is 6 in the morning. Look at this!" he yelled. He threw the crumpled orange paper at her. "They are kicking us out. 3 days. They gave us 3 days before the sheriff comes with guns." Vanessa gasped. I heard the rustle of the paper as she smoothed it out. "This is illegal," she said, her voice rising in panic. "They cannot do this. We have rights. We have tenant rights. We do not have a lease," Hunter shouted. "We never signed a new lease with these ironclad people. We do not have anything, Vanessa. We are 3 months behind on rent to a company that does not exist anymore. We are trespassing." Vanessa began to cry. It was the terrified cry of a child who realizes the adults are not coming to save her. "What about your parents?" she sobbed. "They are upstairs. What do we tell them? We cannot get kicked out while they are here. They will know we are frauds." Hunter paced the room. I could hear his heavy footsteps on the hardwood. "Do not tell them anything," he hissed. "We will fix this. We just need time. Or money. We need money." He stopped pacing. I could practically hear the gears grinding in his head. "Call your father," he said. "My father?" Vanessa asked, confused. "He is broke. He left." "You told him to leave." "Call him Hunter," insisted. "The old man has connections. He worked in construction for 40 years. He knows people. Maybe he knows a lawyer. Maybe he has a stash of cash he did not tell us about. He drives that old truck, but he never spent money on anything. He has to have it hoarded somewhere." "But we kicked him out," Vanessa whimpered. "Just call him," Hunter roared. "Cry. You are good at crying. Tell him you are scared. Tell him about the baby. Just get him on the phone." I sat back in my leather chair in the hotel suite. I took a sip of my coffee. I waited. The phone on my desk buzzed. It was Vanessa. I picked up. I did not say hello. I just breathed into the receiver like a tired old man waking up on a park bench. "Daddy," Vanessa screamed into the phone. "Daddy, you have to help us." "Vanessa," I said, my voice slow and confused. "Is everything okay? It is early." "Nothing is okay," she sobbed. "They are kicking us out. There is a notice on the door. 72 hours, Daddy. The police are coming. You have to do something. You have to stop them." I paused. I let the silence stretch. I wanted her to feel the weight of her own actions. "Vanessa," I said gently. "I am in Alabama. I am at a bus station in Birmingham. The signal is bad." "What do you mean they are kicking you out?" "You told me that was your house. You told me you owned it." She choked on her sob. The lie she had told everyone, including herself, was now choking her. "Well, we rent," she admitted, her voice small, "but we were going to buy it. It was practically ours. But the new owners are monsters. They want us out." "Daddy, do you know anyone? Do you have any friends in the city? A lawyer? A judge? Anyone?" I sighed. It was a long, weary sound. "Honey, I was an electrician. I pulled wire. I did not rub elbows with judges. And even if I did, I am 3 states away. I have $12 in my pocket. What do you want me to do?" Hunter grabbed the phone from her. I heard the fumble as he pressed it to his ear. "Listen to me," Nelson Hunter barked. "This is your fault. My fault," I asked. "How is this my fault, Hunter?" "You brought this bad energy into the house," Hunter said. His voice was trembling with rage and superstition. "Everything was fine until you started acting weird. You left and you took the luck with you. You abandoned us. You abandoned your pregnant daughter. You jinxed us, old man." I stared at the phone. The audacity was breathtaking. He kicked me out into the rain, and now he was blaming me for the weather. "Hunter," I said, "you told me to pay or get out. I got out. Now you pay or you get out. That is how the world works. Do not lecture me, Hunter screamed. You owe us. You lived in our house for 3 years. You ate our food. You owe us back rent. You owe us for emotional distress. If we get evicted, I am holding you responsible. You are holding me responsible for your eviction, I asked calmly. Hunter, you are 30 years old. You have not paid rent in 90 days. Because I was investing in my business, he yelled. I was building a future, something you would not understand, you blue-collar nobody. Where is the money, Nelson? I know you have it. You did not spend your whole pension on bus tickets. Wire us $5,000 right now, or I swear I will make you regret it. I hung up. I did not say goodbye. I just pressed the red button. I turned my attention back to the camera feed. Hunter threw Vanessa's phone onto the sofa. He was hyperventilating. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. He hung up on me, Hunter shouted. He hung up on me. That selfish, ungrateful old man. Vanessa was sitting on the floor, hugging her knees. We are doomed, she whispered. Your parents will wake up in an hour. They will see the sign. They will see the notice. No, Hunter said. His eyes went wide. A look of madness entered his face. No, they won't. He ran to the kitchen. He grabbed a bottle of cleaning spray and a scraper. He ran out the front door. I watched as he frantically scraped the orange paper off the door. He used his fingernails. He used the scraper. He scrubbed until the wood was scratched and raw, but the orange paper was gone. He ran to the yard. He looked at the hole where the for sale sign used to be. He kicked dirt over it. He tried to smooth the grass. He came back inside panting. It is gone, he said. They will not see it. We have 72 hours. We can fix this in 72 hours. How, Vanessa asked. We have no money, Hunter. We have maxed out the cards. We have nothing. Hunter began to pace again. His eyes darted around the room. They landed on a stack of mail on the counter. He walked over and picked up an envelope. It was a letter from a personal injury lawyer addressed to me. Just junk mail. Ambulance chasers looking for clients. Hunter stared at the letter. A slow, twisted smile spread across his face. We sue him, he whispered. What, Vanessa asked. Sue who? Your father, Hunter said. He turned to her, his face glowing with the light of a terrible idea. We sue Nelson. For what, Vanessa asked. He has nothing. Elder abandonment, Hunter said. He sounded like he had just discovered a gold mine. Think about it, Vanessa. He lived here. We took care of him. We fed him. We housed him. He was a dependent, and then he left without notice. He abandoned the family unit. He caused us financial harm by leaving. That makes no sense, Vanessa said. We kicked him out. No, Hunter corrected her. We asked him to contribute. He refused and fled. That is abandonment. And I bet he has assets he is hiding. Old people always hide assets. The government protects seniors' right. But what about the families who take care of them? There have to be laws about this. Filial responsibility laws. We can sue him for support. We can sue him for distress. Hunter, that is crazy, Vanessa said. Is it, Hunter asked? Or is it our only way out? If we file a lawsuit today, we can show it to the landlord. We can show it to the bank. We can say, look, we have a settlement coming. We have assets pending. It might buy us time. It might stop the eviction. He grabbed his laptop. He started typing furiously. Sue father for abandonment. Laws about parents owing children money. Can I sue for emotional damages if grandfather leaves? I watched him from my hotel room. He was grasping at straws. He was drowning and trying to build a raft out of water. He thought he could use the legal system to extort me. He did not know that he was about to walk into a buzzsaw. Sullivan, I said to the empty room, you are going to love this. I picked up my phone and sent a text to my lawyer. Get ready. They are going to try to sue me. Let them file. Do not stop them. Let them put it on public record. I watched Hunter typing. He looked manic. He looked convinced he had found the magic bullet. He looked at Vanessa. We are going to take him for everything he has, Hunter promised. We will find his hidden accounts. We will take his truck. We will garnish his pension. He messed with the wrong family. I took another sip of coffee. He was right about one thing. He had definitely messed with the wrong family. But he was about to learn that in the court of law, facts matter more than feelings, and I held all the facts. Upstairs, I heard the heavy footsteps of Preston Harrington waking up. The ceiling creaked. Hunter froze. Showtime, I whispered. Preston came down the stairs in his silk pajamas. He looked at Hunter and Vanessa. He looked at the scratched front door. Why does it smell like panic in here? Preston asked. Hunter stood up. He put on his best fake smile. Good morning, Dad, Hunter said. Just handling some business. Big things happening. Big things. I closed the laptop. I had seen enough. Hunter was digging his own grave with a teaspoon, and I was going to let him keep digging until he hit the bottom. The air inside Leclerc smelled of old money and truffle oil. It was the kind of restaurant where the menu had no prices and the waiters moved like ghosts across the plush carpet. I sat at the best table in the house, located in a private alcove with a view of the entire dining room. Across from me sat Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Ironclad Developments. We were celebrating the acquisition of the Elm Street property. We were drinking a bottle of wine that cost more than my daughter made in a month. But my attention was not on the wine or the business deal. My attention was fixed on table 4 near the kitchen doors. My daughter Vanessa and her husband Hunter sat there. They looked like they were facing a firing squad. Across from them sat Preston and Linda Harrington. The Harringtons looked bored. They looked at the menu with the disdain of people who were used to better service in better cities. Hunter was sweating. I could see the sheen of perspiration on his forehead even from across the room. He was wearing his best suit, but it looked cheap under the crystal chandeliers. He was nervously checking his phone, likely calculating the remaining balance on his last credit card. They were playing a dangerous game. They were 72 hours away from eviction. They had no money. They had no plan. Their only hope was to charm Preston Harrington into writing a check. They needed a loan to pay off the imaginary landlord they thought was suing them. They needed money to maintain the illusion that they were successful homeowners. So they brought them here to the most expensive restaurant in the city to prove they could afford it. I watched as the waiter approached their table. Hunter ordered a bottle of champagne. His voice cracked when he said the name of the vintage. It was a $300 bottle. Vanessa flinched. She kicked him under the table. I saw the tablecloth move, but Hunter ignored her. He needed to impress his father. So Dad, Hunter said, his voice too loud for the hushed room. I have some exciting news about the house. We are thinking of expanding, buying the lot next door, building a guest house for when you visit. Preston Harrington raised an eyebrow. He took a sip of water. Is that so? He asked. I thought you were having trouble with the title, or the tenant, or whatever lie you told me yesterday about the police being there. It is all sorted. Hunter lied. He waved his hand dismissively. Just a misunderstanding. The police were there to remove a prank sign some kids put up. We are solid. In fact, our equity has doubled in the last year. I took a sip of my wine. The audacity was breathtaking. He was broke, he was trespassing, and he was bragging about equity he did not have. Linda Harrington looked at Vanessa. And you, dear, she said, are you still working at that little boutique, or have you decided to do something serious with your life? I am managing the store now, Vanessa lied. Her voice was small. She looked terrified. Managing Linda scoffed. That is nice. But Hunter needs a partner who brings real capital to the table, especially if you are planning these grand expansions. Vanessa shrank in her seat. She looked at Hunter, waiting for him to defend her. Hunter said nothing. He poured more champagne for his mother. I signaled the waiter. Bring me the lobster thermidor, I said, and another bottle for the table. Marcus Sterling looked at me and smiled. You are enjoying this, aren't you, Nelson? He asked. I looked at table 4. I saw my daughter shrinking under the weight of her mother-in-law disapproval. I saw my son-in-law sweating through his shirt. It is educational, I replied. I am learning exactly how much my family costs. Suddenly, Hunter looked up. His eyes scanned the room. He was looking for the bathroom or maybe an exit. His gaze swept over my table. He looked right at me. He paused. He squinted. I was wearing a charcoal gray Brioni suit that was tailored to fit me perfectly. I wore a Patek Philippe watch on my wrist. I was clean-shaven. I looked like a man who owned the building, not the man who fixed the wiring in the basement. Hunter stared. He nudged Vanessa. Look at that guy over there, Hunter whispered. I could read his lips perfectly. Vanessa looked. She frowned. She did not recognize me. She saw a black man in a suit drinking expensive wine. She saw wealth. She did not see her father. Who is he? Vanessa asked. I do not know, Hunter said. But look at the watch. Look at the suit. He looks like a drug lord, or a rapper. No way a guy like that made his money legally. I chuckled. The racism was so casual, so ingrained. He could not conceive of a black man having wealth and power without it being criminal. To him, I was either a servant or a gangster. There was no middle ground. Preston Harrington turned to look. He adjusted his glasses. Probably new money. Preston sniffed. No class. Look at how he holds his glass. They turned back to their meal, dismissing me. I was just part of the scenery. A curiosity. They went back to eating the food they could not afford, paid for with credit they did not have. The waiter brought the bill to my table. It was $5,200. I took out my black titanium card. The waiter took it with a bow. Marcus leaned in. "Are you going to say hello?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. I signed the receipt. I added a 20% tip. I tore the customer copy off the pad. I folded it once. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I checked my reflection in the mirror on the wall. I looked powerful. I looked dangerous. "I am going to the restroom," I told Marcus. "I will meet you at the valet." I walked across the dining room. My Italian leather shoes made no sound on the carpet. I walked with my head held high. As I approached table 4, I slowed down. Hunter was in the middle of a story about his investments. "Crypto is the future, Dad," he was saying. "I have tripled my portfolio in 6 months." I walked right behind his chair. I was close enough to smell his cheap cologne mixed with fear sweat. I let the folded receipt slip from my fingers. It fluttered down like a white feather. It landed right in the center of their table between the bread basket and the butter dish. I did not stop. I did not look back. I kept walking toward the exit, my stride long and confident. Hunter stopped talking. He looked at the piece of paper that had fallen from the sky. "Did you drop that?" Preston asked. "No," Hunter said. He reached out and picked it up. He unfolded it. I was almost at the door when the silence at table 4 turned into a gasp. I paused just for a second. I wanted to hear it. Hunter looked at the total. $5,000 for one dinner. His eyes bulged. He looked at the signature line. The signature was distinctive. It was the same signature that was on his marriage license. It was the same signature that was on the checks I used to give Vanessa for her birthday. It was a bold, sweeping script. Nelson King. Hunter choked. He dropped the paper as if it were burning. Vanessa grabbed it. She looked at the numbers. She looked at the name. "No," she whispered. Her voice carried across the room. "No, that is impossible." "What is it?" Linda asked, snatching the paper from Vanessa. "Who is Nelson King?" Vanessa looked toward the door. She saw the back of a man in a charcoal suit disappearing into the lobby. She saw the set of the shoulders. She saw the walk. "It is my father," she whispered. Her face went pale as a sheet. "That was my father." Hunter spun around in his chair. He looked at the empty doorway. "That was the drug lord," he stammered. "The guy in the suit. That was Nelson." Preston Harrington snatched the receipt from his wife. He looked at the total. He looked at the items. Vintage wine, lobster, Wagyu beef. "Your father?" Preston asked, looking at Vanessa with new interest. "The homeless electrician, the one who lives in your basement. He is supposed to be in Alabama," Vanessa stuttered. She was shaking. She looked at the expensive food on her plate, and suddenly she looked sick. "He said he was broke. He said he spent his last dollar on a bus ticket." Hunter stood up. He knocked his chair over. He ran toward the door. "Nelson," he shouted. "Hey!" He burst into the lobby. I was already outside, standing under the awning. The valet brought my new truck around. It was a black Ford F-150 Raptor, fully loaded. It was a beast of a machine, polished to a mirror shine. Hunter stopped on the sidewalk. He looked at me. He looked at the truck. He looked at the suit. "Nelson," he said, breathless, "what is this?" I opened the door of the truck. I climbed up into the driver's seat. I looked down at him. He looked small. He looked pathetic. "Hello, Hunter," I said. My voice was calm. "Enjoy your dinner. I hope you can pay for it." "Wait!" Hunter screamed as I put the truck in gear. "Wait. You have money. You have money and you let us starve. You let us get evicted." I rolled up the window. I did not answer. I did not owe him an answer. I pulled away from the curb, leaving him standing there in his cheap suit, holding a receipt that proved he was the fool of the century. Inside the restaurant, Vanessa was still staring at the empty chair where I had sat. Her world was tilting. The narrative she had built her life around, that I was a failure and she was the success, was crumbling. Her father was not a charity case. Her father was the man who dropped $5,000 on dinner and walked away without blinking, and she had kicked him out into the rain. I drove into the night. The city lights blurred past me. I felt a grim satisfaction. They knew now. They knew I was not the victim. I was the player they had never noticed sitting at the table. And I had just played my first ace. Vanessa stormed out of the restaurant, leaving her husband and his parents to figure out how to pay for the rest of the meal with their declined credit cards. Her mind was racing faster than the taxi she hailed. The image of me in that charcoal suit dropping a $5,000 receipt on her table had shattered her reality. She needed to find me. She needed to know where the money came from. But mostly, she needed to know if she could still get her hands on it. She remembered a conversation we had months ago where I jokingly said, if I ever got kicked out, I would stay at the Starlight Motel on the edge of town because they had the best vending machines. It was a lie I told to make her laugh, but in her desperation, it was the only lead she had. She directed the driver to the seediest part of the city. The Starlight Motel was a crumbling brick building with a flickering neon sign that buzzed like a dying insect. Vanessa stepped out of the taxi, her expensive heels crunching on broken glass in the parking lot. She wrinkled her nose at the smell of stale beer and exhaust fumes. This was where she thought her father belonged. This was where she expected to find the man she had discarded. She marched into the lobby, which was nothing more than a plexiglass window and a sleeping night clerk. She banged on the glass. "I am looking for Nelson King," she demanded. "Room number, now." The clerk woke up with a start. He looked at Vanessa in her designer dress standing in his lobby like a lost princess. He rubbed his eyes and consulted a greasy ledger. "King," he mumbled, running a finger down the page. "No King. We have a Smith. We have a Jones. No King." "Check again," she insisted, her voice rising. "He is an old black man. Drives a rusted Ford truck. He has to be here. He said he had no money." The clerk laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. "Lady, if he has no money, he is not here. We charge by the hour, and we do not take credit." Vanessa slammed her hand against the glass. "He lied," she whispered to herself. "He lied about the bus. He lied about the motel." She turned around and looked at the empty parking lot. My truck was not there. The reality began to sink in. I was not scraping by. I was not suffering. I was somewhere else entirely, somewhere she could not reach. The power dynamic had shifted so violently, she felt dizzy. For years, she thought she held the keys to my happiness. She thought allowing me to live in her basement was an act of supreme charity. Now she realized she was the one who had been living on charity. She got back into the taxi. Her hands were shaking as she typed my number into her phone again, straight to voicemail. She threw the phone into her purse. "Take me home," she told the driver. 45 Elm Street. She did not know it yet, but she was not going home. She was returning to the scene of the crime to find the smoking gun. When Vanessa arrived at Elm Street, the house was dark except for the light in the master bedroom where the Harringtons were undoubtedly complaining about the lack of thread count in the sheets. Hunter was in the living room, pacing back and forth, muttering to himself about lawsuits and conspiracies. Vanessa ignored him. She walked past him like a woman possessed. She went straight to the kitchen door that led to the basement. "Where are you going?" Hunter asked, stopping his pacing. "To find the truth," she said. She opened the door and descended the wooden stairs. The air down there was cool and smelled of cedar sawdust and lemon oil. It was the smell of my workshop. It was the smell of her childhood, though she had tried hard to forget it. She turned on the single bulb hanging from the ceiling. The basement was mostly empty now. Hunter had thrown out most of my things. My clothes were gone. My bedding was gone. But the heavy wooden workbench I had built into the wall remained. It was too heavy for Hunter to move. Vanessa began to tear the room apart. She opened the drawers of the workbench. She found old screws, washers, and drill bits. She pulled boxes off the shelves. She was looking for cash. She was looking for a secret stash that would explain the $5,000 dinner. She found nothing. She kicked the leg of the workbench in frustration. A hollow sound echoed back. She paused. She kicked it again. Thud. Hollow. She knelt down. She ran her hands along the baseboard behind the leg. Her fingers found a small latch. I had built it years ago, a simple hidden compartment for my important papers. She pulled. A panel slid open. Inside, there was no cash. There were no gold bars. There was only a thick black ledger and a stack of file folders. Vanessa pulled out the ledger. She opened it to the first page. Her eyes widened as she read the entries. They were written in my distinct block lettering, the handwriting of a draftsman. January 1st. Property tax 45 Elm Street. Paid by Blue Horizon, LLC. Amount $4,000. Source Nelson King personal account. She flipped the page. February 1st. Roof repair. Contractor paid. Amount $2,000. Source Nelson King. She flipped faster, her breath catching in her throat. March 1st. Hunter Car Insurance. Overdue notice. Paid by Blue Horizon. Amount $600. Note Hunter claimed he lost his wallet. April 1st. Vanessa credit card. Minimum payment to avoid default. Paid. Amount $300. Page after page. Year after year. Every financial crisis they had faced, every emergency that had magically resolved itself, every bill they thought they had paid was listed here. The total at the bottom of the last page was circled in red ink. $162,000. Vanessa dropped the book. It hit the concrete floor with a heavy slap. She picked up a folder labeled Incorporation Documents. She opened it. There it was. The Certificate of Formation for Blue Horizon, LLC. Managing Member Nelson King. She stared at the paper. The letters swam before her eyes. I was the landlord. I had always been the landlord. Every time she complained about the management company, she was complaining to me. Every time she demanded repairs, she was demanding them from me. And every time she threatened to evict me, she was threatening the owner of the building. The realization hit her with the force of a physical blow. She collapsed onto the cold floor. She was not a homeowner. She was not even a tenant. She was a dependent child who had bitten the hand that fed her until it finally pulled away. Oh God, she whispered. We kicked him out of his own house. She looked around the basement. It was not a dungeon. It was the control room, and she had just locked herself out. Suddenly, the single light bulb above her head flickered. It buzzed once, twice, and then died. The basement plunged into absolute darkness. Upstairs, a chorus of screams erupted. Vanessa scrambled to her feet in the pitch black. She felt her way to the stairs. She climbed up, stumbling in the dark. She burst into the kitchen. It was dark there, too. The microwave clock was dead. The refrigerator hum had stopped. The streetlights outside were on, but the house was a black void. What happened? Preston Harrington bellowed from the top of the stairs. Why are the lights out? The air conditioning stopped. It is getting hot up here. Hunter was standing by the window holding his phone up as a flashlight. His face was a mask of terror. They cut it, he whispered. They cut the power. Who cut it? Linda shrieked. Pay the bill, Hunter. This is unacceptable. I cannot sleep in this heat. I cannot pay the bill, Hunter yelled back, losing his composure. The account is not in my name. It was in the landlord name. It was in Blue Horizon name. Vanessa walked into the living room. She held the black ledger against her chest like a shield. It was not Blue Horizon, she said, her voice hollow. What are you talking about? Hunter snapped. Of course it was. No, Vanessa said. She shone her phone light on the ledger. Look. Hunter looked. He read the name. He read the expenses. He read the truth. Nelson, he breathed. Your father, he owns the utility accounts. He owns everything, Vanessa said. She started to laugh. It was a manic, hysterical sound. He owns the house, Hunter. He owns the power. He owns the water. He owns us. We have been living in his dollhouse for 10 years. Hunter grabbed the book from her. He flipped through the pages frantically. No, this is a lie. This is a forgery. The old man is a broke electrician. He cannot be a millionaire. He paid $5,000 for dinner tonight. Vanessa screamed. She lost control. All the fear and shame exploded out of her. He was wearing a suit that cost more than your car. He has been paying your car insurance, Hunter. He has been paying your credit cards. He has been keeping us alive, and you treated him like a dog. Upstairs, Preston Harrington was banging on the banister. I want light, he roared. I want water. I tried to flush the toilet, and nothing happened. Fix this now, or I am leaving. Hunter looked at the ceiling, then at Vanessa, then at the ledger. The walls were closing in. The darkness was suffocating. He did this on purpose, Hunter hissed. He planned this. He waited until my parents were here. He waited until we were vulnerable. He is a monster. He is not a monster, Vanessa said, tears streaming down her face. He is a father who got tired of raising a 30-year-old child. She snatched the ledger back. She looked at the address printed on the inside cover. It was a law firm downtown, Sullivan and Associates. I am going there, she said. Where? Hunter asked. To the lawyer, she said. To the only person who can stop this. If my father owns the house, he can stop the eviction. I just have to beg him. She ran to the door. She tried to open it, but she fumbled in the dark. I am coming with you, Hunter said, grabbing his keys. I am going to give that old man a piece of my mind. He cannot do this to me. I have rights. They ran out into the night, leaving the Harringtons screaming in the dark house. They did not know that the power cut was just the first domino. The water had been shut off remotely 10 minutes ago. The gas was next. I watched the feed die on my laptop as the router in the house lost power. The screen went black. I closed the computer. I picked up the phone and called Sullivan. They took the bait, I said. They found the book. They are heading your way. I am ready, Sullivan replied. The office is open. The security guard is briefed. Good, I said. Do not let them sit down. I walked to the window of my suite. The city was bright and alive. Somewhere down there, my daughter was racing through the streets, clutching a book of her own failures, believing she could fix a lifetime of ingratitude with one conversation. She was wrong. The time for talking was over. The time for consequences had arrived. The glass doors of Sullivan and Associates on the 42nd floor of the Metro Tower did not open for just anyone. They were heavy slabs of frosted crystal that required a key card or a buzzer from the receptionist. But that night, the receptionist had been instructed to let the wild animals in. I was sitting in my hotel suite listening to the audio feed from Sullivan's office. I poured myself a glass of water and waited. At 10:15, Vanessa and Hunter burst through those doors. They looked like refugees from a natural disaster. Vanessa was still clutching the black ledger against her chest as if it were a holy book that could ward off evil spirits. Her hair was a mess and her eyes were wild. Hunter was right behind her, sweating and looking over his shoulder as if he expected the darkness of the house to follow him into the fluorescent brightness of the law firm. They marched up to the front desk. The receptionist, a woman named Sarah who had nerves of steel, looked at them over the rim of her glasses. She did not smile. She did not offer them water. I want to see the owner of Blue Horizon, Hunter shouted. He slammed his hand on the marble counter. I know he is here. I know this is the registered address. Bring him out. Vanessa stepped forward, pushing her husband aside. We are looking for Nelson King, she said, her voice trembling with a mix of hope and hysteria. He is my father. We found his book. We know he owns the company. We need to see him right now. Sarah pressed a button on her phone. Mr. Sullivan, the Hughes party is here. They are agitated. Send them back. Sullivan's voice crackled through the intercom. Sarah pointed to the double oak doors at the end of the hall. First door on the right. Do not touch anything on your way. They ran down the hall. They did not walk. They ran. They burst into Sullivan's office without knocking. Sullivan was sitting behind a desk that was large enough to land a helicopter on. He was wearing a three-piece suit even at this hour. He was reading a file. He did not look up immediately. He let them stand there panting and sweating in his climate-controlled sanctuary. Where is he? Vanessa demanded, looking around the room. Where is my father? Sullivan closed the file. He took off his reading glasses and folded them slowly. He looked at Vanessa. Then he looked at Hunter. His gaze was like a laser scanning a barcode. Mr. Nelson King is not here, Sullivan said calmly. I am his legal representative. I am the one you deal with. No, Hunter yelled. We are done dealing with lawyers. We want the man. We found the ledger. We know he has been paying for everything. He owns the house. That means he can stop the eviction. Call him. Tell him his daughter is here. Sullivan stood up. He walked around the desk. He did not offer them a seat. You are under the impression that finding that ledger gives you leverage, Sullivan said. It does not. It is merely evidence. Evidence that my client has supported you for 3 years beyond any legal or moral obligation. And evidence that you have squandered every cent he gave you. Vanessa slammed the ledger onto Sullivan's desk. He lied to us, she screamed. He pretended to be poor. He watched us struggle. He watched you spend, Sullivan corrected her. He watched you live in a house you did not pay for. He watched you drive cars you did not pay for. And he watched you treat him with absolute contempt while he subsidized your lifestyle. That is family business, Hunter spat. That is between us and him. You are just a suit. Now get him on the phone or I will start breaking things. Sullivan smiled. It was a cold, predatory smile. Please do, he said. Add it to the tab. He picked up a remote control and pressed a button. A large screen on the wall flickered to life. It displayed a spreadsheet. The numbers were red and angry. Since you are here to discuss finances, let us look at your current standing, Sullivan said. He pointed to the screen. Item 1. Unpaid rent for the property at 45 Elm Street. 3 months at market rate plus late fees. Total $9,000. Hunter laughed. It was a nervous sound. Rent. We do not owe rent. Nelson owns the house. He let us live there. He owned the house, Sullivan said. Past tense. And you had a lease agreement with Blue Horizon LLC. You signed it, Hunter. I have your signature right here. You stopped paying 3 months ago. That debt did not disappear when the house was sold. It belongs to the estate of the seller, my client. Sullivan clicked the remote again. Item 2. Property damage. Pictures appeared on the screen. High-resolution photos taken from the security cameras I had installed. They showed Hunter kicking the front door. They showed Hunter throwing a chair against the wall when his football team lost. They showed the hole he punched in the drywall in the hallway. They showed the scratches on the hardwood floor from dragging furniture. Malicious destruction of property, Sullivan listed. Unauthorized alterations. Cleaning fees for the biohazard you left in the kitchen. Estimated repair costs $5,200. Vanessa stared at the screen. She saw herself in one of the photos standing by while Hunter destroyed the living room. Item 3. Sullivan continued relentlessly. Legal fees, process server fees, emergency utility shutoff fees, total $1,800. He put the remote down. Your total outstanding debt to my client is $16,000, Sullivan said, payable immediately. Hunter's face turned purple. You are crazy. We are not paying that. Nelson owes us. He owes us for taking care of him. We are going to sue him for abandonment. Sullivan laughed. It was a short, sharp bark. Abandonment. You evicted him, Hunter. We have the video. You threw his clothes in the rain and told him to pay or get out. He got out. That is compliance, not abandonment. And as for suing him, go ahead. File the papers. I will bury you in countersuits so deep you will need a snorkel to breathe. Vanessa grabbed Hunter's arm. She looked terrified. Hunter, stop, she whispered. This is real. Hunter shook her off. No, the old man is soft. He always caves. He is doing this to teach us a lesson, but he will break. Call him. Call him right now. Sullivan looked at the phone on his desk. It was a sleek black conference phone. You want to talk to him? Sullivan asked. You really want to hear what he has to say? Yes, Vanessa said, tears streaming down her face. Yes, please. Just let me talk to my daddy. Sullivan reached out and pressed the speaker button. He dialed my number. I watched the phone on my hotel desk ring. I picked it up. You are on speaker, Nelson, Sullivan said. They are in my office. I did not say anything at first. I let the silence fill the room. I could hear their breathing. I could hear Vanessa sniffing. Daddy, Vanessa whispered. Daddy, are you there? I looked out the window at the city lights. I thought about the little girl who used to hold my hand. I thought about the woman who stood on the porch and watched me drive away in the rain. Who is this? I asked. My voice was ice. It is Vanessa, Daddy, your daughter. I paused. I let the words hang there. I do not have a daughter, I said. Vanessa let out a choked sob. What do you mean? Of course you do. I am right here. My daughter died 3 nights ago, I said. She died the moment she looked at her father and saw a transaction instead of a human being. The woman in your office, Mr. Sullivan, is a stranger. She is a stranger who evicted an old man. She is a stranger who tried to extort money from a pensioner. I do not know her, Hunter shouted at the phone. Stop the drama, Nelson. We know you have money. We saw the ledger. You have millions. You can fix this. Just pay the rent and let us go back home. You are trespassing on private property. Hunter, I said. You have no home. The house is sold. The power is cut. The locks are being changed tomorrow. But where will we go? Vanessa wailed. We have nowhere. Your parents left us. We have no money. That sounds like a problem for strangers, I said. Nelson Hunter screamed. If you do not help us, I swear I will. You will, what I interrupted. You will sue me. You will hurt me. You tried to kill me, Hunter. You tried to kill me with stress and shame. You failed. Mr. Sullivan. I continued, my voice hardening. Why are these people still in your office? They refuse to leave, Sullivan said, looking at Hunter with disdain. Then have them removed, I said. They are intruders. Treat them like intruders. Daddy, please, Vanessa begged. Just one chance. I am sorry. I am so sorry. Sorry does not pay the rent, Vanessa, I said. And your lease is up. I hung up the phone. In the office, Sullivan looked at them. The connection was dead. The silence was absolute. You heard the man, Sullivan said. Get out. Hunter stared at the phone. He looked like he had been hit with a hammer. He could not believe it. The safety net was gone. The bank of Dad was closed. "I am not leaving until I get a check," Hunter said. He grabbed a heavy crystal ashtray from the desk. "I am not leaving until I get what I am owed." Sullivan did not flinch. He pressed a button under his desk. The door behind them burst open. 2 uniformed police officers stepped in. They had been waiting in the break room. Sullivan had called them 10 minutes ago. "This is them," Sullivan said, pointing at Hunter and Vanessa. "Criminal trespass, disorderly conduct, and making threats." Hunter dropped the ashtray. It bounced on the carpet. "Wait," Hunter said, raising his hands. "Wait, we are leaving. We are going." "Officer, remove them," Sullivan said. "And if they resist, charge them." The officers grabbed Hunter by the arms. He tried to pull away, but they were professionals. They spun him around and marched him toward the door. Vanessa followed, sobbing uncontrollably, clutching the ledger as if it could save her. "That is my father's book," she cried. "I need to keep it." An officer took the book from her hands. "Evidence, ma'am. Let's go." I watched them being escorted out of the building. I watched them standing on the sidewalk as the police took their information and gave them a citation. I watched them walk away into the dark city alone, broke and homeless. They had gone into the lion's den expecting to find a lamb. They found teeth instead. I turned off the laptop. I closed my eyes. It was done. The cord was cut. Tomorrow was a new day. And for the first time in a long time, it was a day that belonged entirely to me. The sun rose over Elm Street on the 3rd day like a spotlight turning on for the final act of a tragedy. The 72-hour notice had expired at midnight. The grace period was over. Inside the house, Hunter and Vanessa were huddled on the floor of the living room amidst boxes they had frantically packed but had nowhere to take. They had spent the last 3 days paralyzed by denial, hoping for a miracle that never came. They thought the world would stop because they were special. They thought the rules did not apply to people who drove leased luxury cars and wore designer clothes. They were wrong. At 8 o'clock sharp, a convoy of vehicles turned the corner. It was not a moving company hired by a thoughtful family. It was the Sheriff Department Eviction Enforcement Unit, followed by a team of foreclosure clean-out specialists. These were men who were paid to empty a house in under an hour. They did not carry bubble wrap. They carried heavy-duty trash bags and sledgehammers. Sheriff Miller led the way. He was a large man with a face carved from granite. I knew him. He was a good man who did his job without malice, but he had zero tolerance for nonsense. He walked up the driveway past the trampled grass where the "for sale" sign used to be. He pounded on the door. It was a heavy, authoritative sound that shook the windows. "Sheriff Department," he boomed. "Open up." Inside, I could see the panic through my remote camera feed before the power was cut for good. Hunter scrambled to his feet. He looked wild. He had not shaved in 3 days. He was wearing the same wrinkled clothes he had worn to the law firm. He ran to the door, but he did not open it. He leaned against it as if his body weight could hold back the inevitable. "Go away," Hunter screamed. "We have rights. My lawyer is filing an injunction. You cannot come in." Sheriff Miller did not argue. He signaled to his deputy. The deputy stepped forward with a battering ram. One swing. The door jamb splintered. The door flew open, knocking Hunter backward onto the floor. Sheriff Miller stepped over the threshold. He looked down at Hunter, who was scrambling backward like a crab. Hunter Hughes, the sheriff said, consulting a clipboard. "You have been served a writ of possession. You failed to vacate. You are now trespassing. You have 5 minutes to grab your essential personal items and leave the premises. Anything left behind will be removed to the curb." 5 minutes! Vanessa shrieked. She ran into the room clutching a jewelry box. "We need more time. We have furniture. We have clothes. You cannot just throw us out." The sheriff looked at her. He did not see a victim. He saw a squatter who had lived rent-free for 3 months. "You had 72 hours, Ma'am," he said. "Your time is up. Boys, clear it out." The clean-out crew swarmed the house. They were a blur of motion. They did not carefully disassemble the bed frames. They smashed them apart with mallets. They did not fold the clothes. They swept them into black contractor bags. I sat in my truck parked down the street watching through the windshield. It was a scene of poetic justice that was almost too perfect to believe. 3 years ago, I had moved my own furniture into that basement, carefully carrying each piece so I would not scratch their walls. Tonight I watched as their expensive leather sofa was dragged through the front door and shoved off the porch. It landed in the wet dirt with a heavy thud. "Hey, be careful," Hunter shouted, running after the movers. "That is Italian leather. It cost $4,000. The mover ignored him. He went back inside and came out with the flat-screen television. He tossed it onto the sofa. The screen cracked. Hunter screamed. He tried to grab the mover. Sheriff Miller stepped in. "Touch him and you go to jail for assault," the sheriff warned. "Step back to the sidewalk. Now." Hunter retreated. He stood on the sidewalk watching his life being dismantled. Vanessa ran out carrying armfuls of shoes. She dropped a pair of red stilettos in the gutter. She tried to run back in, but a deputy blocked her path. "Stay out, ma'am. It is not safe." Then came the items that hurt them the most. The symbols of their fake status. The espresso machine. The designer lamps. The art prints they claimed were originals. They all went flying out the door, landing in a heap on the lawn. It looked like a landfill had exploded in the front yard. It was exactly what Vanessa had done to me. She had thrown my life into the rain in trash bags. Now her life was a pile of debris on the curb, exposed to the elements and the eyes of the neighborhood. The only difference was that I had walked away with my dignity. She was standing in the wreckage of her own ego, screaming at men who were just doing their jobs. But the final blow was not the furniture. It was the family. Preston and Linda Harrington appeared in the doorway. They were dressed for travel. Preston wore a blazer and Linda had a silk scarf wrapped around her head. They carried their own luggage. They had packed while their son was screaming at the police. They stepped over the debris on the porch with looks of absolute revulsion. They did not help. They did not grab a box of Vanessa things. They clutched their Louis Vuitton bags tight to their chests, terrified that the poverty of the situation might rub off on them. Hunter ran to them. "Dad," he pleaded. "Dad, you have to do something. Talk to the sheriff. Tell him who we are. Buy the house, Dad. Just write a check." Preston Harrington stopped. He looked at his son. He looked at the pile of trash on the lawn. He looked at the neighbors gathering across the street. "Who we are." Preston repeated, his voice trembling with rage. "I know who I am, Hunter. I am a respected businessman. I am a man of my word. I do not know who you are. You are a liar. You are a fraud. You brought us into a squat house and humiliated us. Dad, please!" Hunter cried, grabbing his father's sleeve. "I can fix this. I just need a loan. 10,000. Just to get us into a hotel and put a deposit on a new place." Linda Harrington slapped his hand away. "A loan," she scoffed. "You maxed out your credit cards buying champagne you could not afford. You lied about owning this house. You have nothing, Hunter. You are a failure." Vanessa approached them, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "Linda, please," she sobbed. "We have nowhere to go. Can we come with you, just for a few days until we sort this out?" Linda looked at Vanessa. Her gaze was cold enough to freeze water. "Come with us," Linda asked. "To Connecticut. To my home. So you can embarrass me there too." "Absolutely not." "But we are family," Vanessa wailed. "You are a liability," Linda said. She smoothed her scarf. "You ruined my son. You filled his head with delusions of grandeur. You and your father. I knew this would happen. People like you always drag people like us down." "People like me," Vanessa whispered. "What does that mean?" "It means people with no class and no assets," Linda spat. "Do not contact us, Vanessa. Do not call. Do not write. And Hunter, if you want to be part of this family again, you will pay us back every cent you wasted on this charade. Until then, you are on your own." A yellow taxi pulled up to the curb. Preston had called it 10 minutes ago. The driver popped the trunk. Preston and Linda loaded their bags. They moved with a speed that belied their age, desperate to escape the scene of the crime. "Mom, wait!" Hunter shouted as Linda opened the taxi door. "Mom, I have no money. I have no car. They took the keys." "How are we supposed to leave?" "Walk," Linda said. "It builds character." She got in and slammed the door. The taxi sped away, leaving Hunter and Vanessa standing in a cloud of exhaust fumes. They were alone. Their parents had abandoned them. Their landlord had evicted them. Their possessions were a mountain of trash on the sidewalk. And the audience was watching. I shifted in the leather seat of my Ford F-150 Raptor. I had parked it just down the block under the shade of a large oak tree. The engine was off, but the windows were down. I could hear everything. Across the street, the neighbors had gathered. These were the people Hunter had sneered at for 3 years. Mrs. Higgins, who walked her dog every morning, and whom Hunter had yelled at for letting the dog sniff his grass. Mr. Alvarez, who worked on his car in his driveway, and whom Hunter had reported to the HOA for being unsightly. The young couple next door whose baby cried at night, and whom Hunter had banged on the wall to silence. They were all there. And they were all holding phones. They were not calling for help. They were filming. I saw Mrs. Higgins holding her phone up horizontally, capturing the entire panoramic disaster. She was live streaming. I pulled out my own phone and opened the neighborhood Facebook group. There it was. Live at Elm Street. The karma bus has arrived. The video showed Hunter kicking a cushion across the lawn. It showed Vanessa sitting on a pile of clothes, sobbing into her hands. It showed the sheriff putting a padlock on the front door. I could hear the commentary from the neighbors. "Look at him now," Mr. Alvarez said on the video. "Mr. Big Shot getting kicked to the curb. Guess he did not own the place after all. He threatened to sue me for my fence line last month," another neighbor chimed in. "Said he had lawyers on retainer. Does not look like he can afford a lawyer now." Hunter saw them filming. He spun around, his face purple with rage. "Stop filming," he screamed. "This is private property. You have no right." "It is public property now, buddy," a teenager yelled back. "You are on the sidewalk." Hunter charged toward them. He looked ready to fight the entire neighborhood. Sheriff Miller stepped in front of him. He put a hand on his holster. "That is enough, son," the sheriff said. "You are causing a disturbance. Walk away. Now, or I will arrest you for disorderly conduct." Hunter stopped. He looked at the sheriff. He looked at the neighbors. He looked at the pile of trash that used to be his life. He realized he had no power. He had no allies. He turned to Vanessa. She was staring at the ground. "Come on," he said roughly, grabbing her arm. "We are leaving." "Where?" Vanessa asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Anywhere but here," Hunter said. He dragged her down the street. They left their furniture. They left the espresso machine. They left the broken TV. They walked away with only the clothes on their backs and the bitter taste of total defeat. I started the Raptor. The engine growled, a deep, powerful sound that vibrated through the chassis. I pulled out of the parking spot and drove slowly down the street. As I passed them, I slowed down. I rolled down the passenger window. Hunter looked up. He saw the truck. It was brand new, black and massive. It was the kind of truck he had always made fun of, calling it a redneck ride. But now, seeing it gleaming in the sun, he looked at it with envy. Then he saw me. He stopped walking. His mouth dropped open. Vanessa looked up. Her eyes widened. I was wearing sunglasses and a polo shirt. My arm rested casually on the windowsill. I looked at them. I did not smile. I did not frown. I just looked. "Dad," Vanessa whispered. I did not stop. I did not offer them a ride. I pressed the accelerator, and the twin-turbo engine roared. The truck surged forward, leaving them in a cloud of dust. I looked in the rearview mirror. They were shrinking in the distance, two small figures standing on the side of the road with nothing but each other and the weight of their own choices. They had wanted me to leave. They had wanted me gone. Well, I was gone, and I had taken the roof with me. I turned the corner, and the house disappeared from view. I felt a lightness in my chest. The anchor was cut. The ship was sailing. And for the first time in a long time, I was the captain. I pressed the brake pedal, and the massive truck came to a halt at the stop sign at the end of Elm Street. I could have turned right and disappeared onto the main road forever. I could have left them there as specks in my rearview mirror. But a part of me wanted them to see. A part of me needed them to understand the magnitude of their mistake up close. I watched in the side mirror as they ran toward me. They looked like refugees from a war zone. Hunter was red-faced and panting, his expensive loafers slapping against the pavement. Vanessa was barefoot now, holding her heels in one hand, her makeup streaked across her face like war paint. They reached the truck. Hunter threw himself in front of the grill, his hand slamming onto the hood. He was risking his life to stop me, but desperation makes men do foolish things. Vanessa ran to my window. She banged on the glass with her fist. The diamond ring I had bought her for her 21st birthday clicked against the tint. "Daddy, open the door," she screamed. "Open the door right now." I looked at her. I took a moment to adjust the cuff of my shirt, revealing the gold Rolex Submariner that rested against my wrist. It was a watch I had bought 10 years ago and kept in a safety deposit box. Today it felt right to wear it. I rolled down the window. The electric motor hummed silently. The glass slid down, erasing the barrier between my climate-controlled luxury and their humid, desperate reality. Vanessa grabbed the doorframe. She stared at me. Her eyes darted from my sunglasses to the leather stitching on the dashboard to the expensive watch ticking away the seconds of her defeat. She looked at the truck as if it were a spaceship that had just landed. "You won the lottery," she gasped. Her voice was breathless with a sudden, terrifying hope. "That is it, isn't it? You won the Powerball. You have millions. That is why you left." That is why you are dressed like this. Hunter came around to the side of the truck. He was breathing hard, clutching his chest. He looked at me with a mixture of greed and accusation. You won the lottery, he repeated. You won and you let us get evicted. You let my parents leave. You let us sleep on the floor while you were sitting on a pile of cash. How could you be so selfish? I took off my sunglasses. I folded them slowly and placed them in the center console. I looked Hunter in the eye. I looked at Vanessa. I wanted to remember this moment. I wanted to remember the exact look of avarice that replaced the fear in their eyes the moment they smelled money. I did not win the lottery, I said. My voice was calm, steady, and deep. I do not gamble, Hunter. That is your vice, not mine. Then where did this come from? Vanessa demanded, gesturing at the truck. Where did the suit come from? The hotel? The dinner receipt? You are a broke electrician. You told us you were broke. I lied, I said simply. What? She whispered. I lied, Vanessa. I have never been broke. I retired 10 years ago with a net worth that would make your father-in-law choke on his golf ball. I chose to live simply because I wanted to be close to you. I wanted to be a father, not an ATM. But you made it very clear that you only valued the ATM. Hunter gripped the mirror. You have money, he said, his voice shaking. Then fix this. Buy the house back. Write a check to the landlord. Get us back inside. We can forgive you, Nelson. We can forgive you for lying if you fix this right now. I laughed. It was a genuine laugh, but it had no warmth in it. It was the laugh of a man watching a clown try to put out a fire with gasoline. I cannot buy the house back, Hunter, I said, because I just sold it. Vanessa froze. You sold it. How could you sell it? You do not own it. Blue Horizon owns it. I am Blue Horizon, I said. The words hung in the air between us, heavy and absolute. Vanessa's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She blinked once, twice, trying to process the information. I bought that house 10 years ago, I continued. I formed the LLC to protect you. I wanted you to have a safe place to live while you started your careers. I charged you half the market rent. I paid for every repair, I paid the taxes, I paid the insurance. And when you stopped paying rent 3 months ago, I covered that too out of my own pocket because I did not want you to worry. No, Vanessa whimpered. No, that is not true. It is true, I said. Every time you called the property manager to complain about a draft, you were emailing me. Every time you cursed the landlord for not upgrading the kitchen, you were cursing me. I lived in your basement listening to you insult the owner of the building while he fixed your leaky faucet for free. Hunter stepped back. He looked like he was going to be sick. He remembered all the things he had said. He remembered calling the landlord a faceless corporate leech. He remembered threatening to sue Blue Horizon. He realized he had been threatening the man who was sleeping downstairs. You sold our home, Hunter whispered. It was never your home, I corrected him. It was my investment. And it was a bad investment. The tenants were ungrateful. They damaged the property. They stopped paying rent. So I liquidated the asset. I sold it for $700,000 cash yesterday morning. The money is already in my account. 700,000, Vanessa breathed. Her eyes glazed over. She was doing the math. She was calculating how many designer bags, how many vacations, how many cars that money could buy. Daddy, she said, her voice taking on that wheedling, manipulative tone again. Daddy, that is amazing. $700,000. We are rich. We can start over. We can buy a bigger house, a better house, one with a pool. We can forget all of this happened. I looked at her with pity. She still did not get it. She thought the money was hers. She thought my name on the bank account was just a technicality. We are not rich, Vanessa, I said. I am rich. You are homeless. What? She asked, her smile faltering. I did not keep the rent money you paid me over the years, I said. Every check you wrote to Blue Horizon I donated. I gave it to a scholarship fund for trade schools. I used your money to help kids who actually want to work. Kids who do not think manual labor is beneath them. I have been using your rent to build futures for people who deserve them. You gave our money away, Hunter shouted. That was our money. It was rent, Hunter, I said. It was the fee you paid to live in my house. It ceased to be your money the moment you signed the check. And speaking of money, you still owe me $15,000. Hunter turned purple. I am not paying you a dime. Sullivan will be in touch, I said. He is very good at collections. He will garnish your wages, Hunter, assuming you ever get a job again. He will attach your bank accounts. He will put a lien on any future assets. You will pay me back every cent, not because I need the money, but because you need to learn that debts are real. Daddy, please, Vanessa cried, reaching into the truck trying to grab my hand. Do not do this. We are your family. We made a mistake. We are sorry. Look at us. We have nothing. I looked at them, really looked at them. They stood on the street corner surrounded by the wreckage of their lives. They had no parents to save them. They had no house to shelter them. They had no status to protect them. They were stripped bare. You have exactly what you earned, I said. But where will we go? Vanessa sobbed. I do not know, I said. And for the first time in my life, I do not care. You told me to figure it out when you kicked me out. Now it is your turn. Figure it out. I put the truck in drive. The gears engaged with a solid mechanical thud. Daddy, Vanessa screamed, clinging to the door handle. Daddy, wait. Let go, Vanessa, I warned. She looked at my face. She saw the stone wall that had replaced her father. She let go. She stepped back, her hands falling to her sides. Hunter stood there, shaking his head, muttering to himself. He looked like a man who had stared into the sun and gone blind. I pressed the accelerator. The tires gripped the pavement. The truck surged forward with effortless power. I watched them in the side mirror one last time. They stood together, two small figures shrinking against the backdrop of the suburban dream they had been exiled from. They looked like children waiting for a bus that would never come. I turned onto the main avenue and merged into traffic. The air conditioning was cool against my face. The leather seat was comfortable. The music on the radio was soft jazz. I drove toward the highway. I drove toward the ocean. I drove toward a future where my phone did not ring with demands and my basement did not smell of other people's ungratefulness. I left them in the dust of their own making. And as the city limits faded behind me, I realized I was not just leaving my daughter and her husband. I was leaving behind the man I used to be. The man who apologized for existing. The man who made himself small so others could feel big. That man was gone. He had died in the rain on Elm Street. The man driving the truck was new, and he had a lot of living left to do. Hunter did not go quietly into the night. He went into the digital world screaming. I was sitting in my suite watching the city lights when my phone began to buzz incessantly. It was not a call. It was a flood of notifications. I opened my social media apps and there it was. Hunter had launched a nuclear strike on my reputation. He had posted a long rambling video on every platform he could access. He sat in the driver's seat of his leased car, the interior dark and shadowy, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of his phone screen. He looked disheveled. He looked desperate. But most of all, he looked like a victim. In the video, Hunter wiped away fake tears. He spoke with a trembling voice that was an impressive performance of grief. He told the world that I was a con artist. He claimed that I had hidden millions of dollars while watching my own daughter starve. He claimed that I had mentally abused them for years, playing mind games and manipulating their emotions. He even brought up the lie about the pregnancy. He looked straight into the camera lens and said that I had abandoned my unborn grandchild to sleep on the street. He called me a predator. He called me a fraud. He said that I had stolen the house from them through a legal loophole and that I was now laughing at their misery from a penthouse. The internet is a volatile beast. It feeds on outrage without checking the facts. Within hours, the post had been shared thousands of times. Comments poured in from strangers who did not know me but hated me based on Hunter's narrative. They called me a monster. They called me a deadbeat father. Some even threatened to find me and teach me a lesson. Hunter was in the comments section fueling the fire. He replied to everyone thanking them for their support and asking for donations to a crowdfunding page he had set up called Justice for the Hughes Family. He was trying to monetize his own eviction. He was trying to turn his failure into a payday. I watched the donation counter tick up. $5, $20, $100. People were buying his lie. They saw a young white couple crying in a car and they opened their wallets. They did not ask why a 30-year-old man had no savings. They did not ask why his own parents had abandoned him. They just saw the tears and the accusations. Sullivan called me. His voice was tense. "Nelson, we need to issue a statement," he said. "This is libel. This is defamation of character. He is damaging your reputation. We can get a cease and desist order. We can sue him for damages." I looked at the screen. I watched Hunter smiling faintly as the view count climbed. He thought he had won. He thought he could use the court of public opinion to destroy me because he had failed in the court of law. No, Sullivan, I said calmly. No statements, no lawyers, not for this. But he is lying, Sullivan argued. He is painting you as a villain. Let him paint, I said. He is painting himself into a corner. He forgot one thing, Sullivan. He forgot that the house on Elm Street was wired for security. He forgot that I record everything. I hung up the phone. I opened my laptop. I went to the cloud storage where my security footage was archived. I found the file dated 3 days ago. The file name was Eviction Night. I opened my video editing software. I did not need to add commentary. I did not need to add music. The raw footage was powerful enough. I selected the clip starting from the moment Vanessa opened the door. I clicked upload. I posted it directly to the comment section of Hunter S. viral video. I posted it to the neighborhood group. I posted it to his LinkedIn profile. I posted it everywhere. The caption was simple: the truth about the rent. Then I sat back and waited. The reaction was instantaneous. The internet stopped donating. It started watching. The video played out in high-definition audio and video. It showed the rain falling in sheets. It showed Vanessa kicking my clothes down the stairs. It showed her screaming at her own father, calling me a parasite. It showed her demanding $1,500 from a pensioner. But the real nail in the coffin was Hunter. The microphone picked up every word he said. It picked up his sneer. It picked up his arrogance. It is nothing personal. Nelson Hunter, his voice rang out clear and sharp. We just cannot afford to carry dead weight anymore. My parents are people of quality, Nelson. They are not used to this atmosphere. The internet heard it. They heard the way he said quality. They heard the way he said atmosphere. They heard the racial undertone that dripped from his lips like poison. They saw a young, able-bodied man mocking an older black man who had built the house he was standing in. They saw him filming me with glee as I walked into the rain. The tide turned so fast it was dizzying. The comments on Hunter S. video stopped being supportive. They became vicious. You kicked your own father out in the rain, one user wrote. Quality people, another commented. You are trash. Wait, is that racism? I hear a third user posted. This guy is a bigot. The crowdfunding page was flagged for fraud. The donations stopped. People started demanding refunds. The video spread like a virus, but this time it was infecting Hunter S. life, not mine. It was shared on forums, exposed bad bosses, and community justice pages. Hunter Hughes became the face of entitlement and bigotry in under an hour. I watched as Hunter tried to delete the comments. He tried to delete the video. But the internet is forever. People had already screen recorded it. They were reposting it faster than he could take it down. He was fighting a hydra. Every time he cut off one head, 2 more appeared screaming for justice. I took a sip of my water. I felt no guilt. I had simply held up a mirror. If he did not like the reflection, that was his problem. The fallout began at 9 in the morning the next day. Hunter worked as a junior account manager for a mid-sized logistics firm. They had a very strict social media policy. They also had a very diverse client base. When the HR director arrived at her office, her inbox was already full of emails with links to the video. I had a contact at the firm, a man I had done electrical work for years ago. He texted me the details later. Hunter was sitting in his car in a Walmart parking lot trying to figure out where to sleep when his phone rang. It was his boss. Hunter did not even get a chance to say hello. Mr. Hughes, his boss said, "We have seen the video." Hunter tried to stammer. It is out of context. It is a deep fake. My father-in-law is crazy. Save it, the boss cut him off. Your behavior does not align with our company values. We have a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination and elder abuse. You are terminated effective immediately. Do not come to the office to collect your things. We will mail them to your address on file. Oh, wait, the boss added. I heard you do not have an address anymore. We will hold the box at the front desk for 24 hours. After that, it goes in the trash, just like you did to your father-in-law. Click. Hunter lost his job, his income, and his reputation in a 30-second phone call. He screamed in his car. He punched the dashboard. He realized that the internet fame he had sought was now a cage he could not escape. Vanessa fared no better. She was scrolling through her Instagram trying to find anyone who would let them crash on a couch. She saw that her follower count was dropping by the hundreds. Her friends, the women she brunched with and pretended to be rich with, were blocking her. One of her closest friends, a woman named Jessica, posted a public status update. I am absolutely disgusted by the behavior of Vanessa Hughes. I had no idea she treated her father this way. Please do not associate me with her anymore. Karma is real. Vanessa tried to call her, blocked. She tried to message her maid of honor. Blocked. She tried to call her cousin. Straight to voicemail. They were radioactive. No one wanted to be seen with them. No one wanted to help them. They were social pariahs. The society they had tried so hard to impress had chewed them up and spit them out. They sat in their leased car, which was 2 payments behind on a lease that was about to be revoked. They had no gas. They had no money. They had no friends. They had no family. I watched the last of the online comments roll in. Justice served, someone wrote. I hope they enjoy the rain, another added. I closed my laptop. I stood up and walked to the balcony of my suite. The air was fresh and clean. Far below me in a parking lot somewhere, my daughter and her husband were learning the hardest lesson of their lives. You cannot build a future on the backs of people you despise, and when you burn a bridge, you better make sure you know how to swim. They were drowning now, and I was the only one with a life raft, but I was not throwing it. Not yet. They needed to tread water a little longer. They needed to feel the cold depth of their reality before they could ever appreciate the warmth of the sun again. I stood on the terrace of my new penthouse overlooking the city skyline. It was the kind of view I had built for others my entire life, but never enjoyed myself. The wind was high and cold, but inside the glass walls it was perfectly silent. I held a glass of aged scotch in my hand, watching the lights of the city flicker like distant stars. It had been 48 hours since the eviction. 48 hours since the viral video destroyed Hunter's reputation. 48 hours since I had become a ghost to the people who claimed to love me. That silence was broken by the harsh buzzing of the intercom. I walked to the wall panel and pressed the button. Mr. King, the concierge voice, came through. I apologize for the disturbance, sir. There is a woman here in the lobby. She claims to be your daughter. I looked at the screen. The camera showed a wide-angle view of the marble lobby downstairs. In the corner near the potted palms stood a figure that barely resembled the Vanessa I knew. She was wearing a hoodie that was 2 sizes too big and stained with what looked like coffee or mud. Her hair, usually perfectly styled, was matted and pulled back in a messy knot. She was shaking. She is causing a bit of a scene, the concierge continued, his voice lowering. She says she is starving. She says she needs to see her father. Should I call the police? I stared at the image. A part of me, the part that had carried her on my shoulders at the zoo 20 years ago, wanted to rush down there. That part wanted to wrap her in a blanket and feed her soup. But then I remembered the rain on Elm Street. I remembered the eviction notice she taped to my door. I remembered the way she looked at me when she thought I was poor. Send her up, I said. I unlocked the private elevator. I waited by the door of the penthouse. I did not open it. I waited for the chime. When the elevator doors slid open, Vanessa stepped into the hallway. She smelled of stale sweat and cheap fast food grease. She looked around the hallway, taking in the gold sconces and the thick carpet. She saw me standing in the doorway of my apartment. "Daddy," she whispered. She ran toward me. She threw herself at my feet. It was a dramatic gesture worthy of a soap opera. She grabbed the hem of my trousers with dirty hands. "I am so sorry," she sobbed. Her voice echoed in the hallway. "I am so sorry, Daddy. Please forgive me. I was wrong. I was so wrong." I looked down at her. I did not move. I did not help her up. "Get up, Vanessa," I said. My voice was flat. She scrambled to her knees, but she did not stand. She looked up at me with eyes that were red and swollen. "Hunter made me do it," she cried. "He brainwashed me, Daddy. He told me you were holding out on us. He told me we deserved the house. I was scared. I was confused. I did not mean any of those things I said. I love you. You are my father." I listened to her excuses. They were the same excuses she used when she failed a test in high school. It was the teacher's fault. It was the book's fault. It was never Vanessa's fault. "You are 28 years old," I said. "You are not a child. You made a choice to throw me out. You made a choice to try and sue me. Hunter did not hold a gun to your head." "But I have nowhere to go," she wailed. "We have been sleeping in the car. It is cold. We have no food. My friends blocked me. No one will help us." "That is because people do not like ingratitude," I said. "You are learning that the hard way." She grabbed my hand. Her grip was desperate. Her fingernails dug into my skin. "Daddy, please let me in. Just for a night. I need a shower. I need a bed. I cannot go back to that car." I pulled my hand away. I stepped back into the foyer of my apartment. I looked at the marble floors and the custom art on the walls. I looked at the sanctuary I had built for myself. I knew that if I let her in, she would never leave. She would infect this place just like she infected the house on Elm Street. "No," I said. "You cannot come in." Then she played her final card. The card she thought was an ace. "Daddy, wait!" she screamed as I started to close the door. "There is something else. Something I did not tell you because I was scared." She placed her hands on her stomach. She looked up at me with wide, pleading eyes. "I am pregnant," she said. I froze. My hand hovered on the door handle. "I am pregnant with your grandchild," she repeated, seeing my hesitation. "I found out the morning of the eviction. That is why I was so crazy. That is why I needed the money. I was trying to protect the baby. Daddy, you cannot let your grandchild sleep in a car. You cannot let your grandchild starve." I looked at her stomach. It was flat under the baggy sweatshirt. I looked at her eyes. They were desperate, but there was something else there too. A flicker of calculation. A tiny spark of hope that she had found the crack in my armor. I remembered the conversation in the hotel room when Hunter hissed at her to mention the baby. I remembered that she had been on strict birth control for 5 years because she said children were parasites who ruined your figure and your bank account. I remembered her telling her friends at brunch that she would never have kids until she had a nanny and $1 million. And now suddenly, when she was homeless and broke, she was pregnant. It was a lie. I knew it in my gut. It was the most despicable lie she could tell. She was trying to use an innocent life, a life that did not even exist, as a hostage to get back into luxury. I looked at her. I let my face soften just a fraction. "You are pregnant?" I asked. "Yes," she nodded vigorously. "Yes, Daddy, I am. It is early, but it is real. A little boy, or a girl. We do not know yet, but it is your blood." I stepped back from the door. "Wait here," I said. Her face lit up. She thought she had won. She thought the door was opening. She started to stand up, smoothing her dirty sweatshirt. I walked into the kitchen. On the counter sat the remains of my lunch. It was a club sandwich from a gourmet deli downstairs. It was thick with turkey and bacon and avocado on artisan bread. I had eaten half of it. The other half was wrapped in wax paper. I picked it up. It was cold, but it was food. It was sustenance. I walked back to the door. Vanessa was standing there smiling through her tears. She took a step forward, expecting to be invited into the warmth. I stopped her with a raised hand. "You say you are starving," I said. "I am," she said. "I have not eaten in 2 days. Neither has the baby." I held out the sandwich. "Here," I said. She looked at the half-eaten sandwich in my hand. She looked at me. Her smile faltered. "What is this?" she asked. "It is food," I said. "You said you were hungry. Eat." She looked at the sandwich with disgust. She expected a seat at the table. She expected a steak. She expected a credit card. She did not expect leftovers. "Daddy," she said, her voice whining, "I cannot eat that. It is cold. It is leftovers. I need a real meal. I need vitamins. For the baby." I threw the sandwich at her. It hit her in the chest and fell to the floor. The wax paper opened, revealing the layers of meat and bread. "Eat it!" I roared. My voice echoed in the hallway, making her jump. "You stand there and tell me you are starving. You tell me you are carrying my grandchild. If you were truly starving, you would eat it off the floor. But you are not starving, Vanessa. You are just greedy." She stared at the sandwich on the carpet. She looked at me with shock. She had never heard me yell like that. She had never seen me throw anything. "That is all I have for strangers," I said. "Strangers," she gasped. "I am your daughter." "My daughter would not lie about a baby to get money," I said. "My daughter would not use a child as a bargaining chip." "I am not lying," she screamed. "I swear." "We will see," I said. I grabbed the door handle. I looked her in the eye. "Eat the sandwich, Vanessa, or starve. It is your choice. Just like it was your choice to kick me out." I slammed the heavy oak door in her face. I heard her scream on the other side. I heard her pounding on the wood. "Daddy, open up. Daddy, please." I locked the deadbolt. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door. My heart was hammering in my chest. It took every ounce of strength I had to do that. It went against every instinct of a father. But I knew I had to be strong. I had to break the cycle. I walked to the kitchen island and picked up my phone. I dialed a number I had saved years ago. It was Dr. Aris, my private concierge doctor. He was a man who made house calls for the right price. A man who carried a full diagnostic kit in his black bag. "Dr. Aris," I said when he answered. "Mr. King, how can I help you? I need a house call," I said. "It is urgent. I have a young woman in my lobby or possibly in my hallway. She claims to be pregnant. I need to verify it." "Of course," Dr. Aris said. "I can be there in 20 minutes. Do you want a blood test or an ultrasound?" "Bring everything," I said. "Bring the portable ultrasound. Bring the blood kit. I want zero margin for error. I want a definitive answer tonight. I will meet you in the lobby," I said. I hung up. I looked at the security monitor for the hallway. Vanessa was sitting on the floor eating the sandwich. She was eating it hungrily, tearing at the bread with her teeth. She was crying as she ate, wiping her nose on her sleeve. She was hungry. That part was true. But the pregnancy was the variable I needed to isolate. If she was pregnant, I would help the child. I would set up a trust. I would ensure the baby was safe. But I would not give the money to her. And I would certainly not let her back into my life to use that child as a weapon. But if she was lying, if she had invented a life just to scam me out of mine, then I would expose her. I would expose her so thoroughly that she would never be able to tell another lie again. I put on my jacket. I checked my watch. 20 minutes. The truth was coming. And unlike my daughter, the truth did not need to be invited in. It just kicked the door down. The storm outside the penthouse glass was relentless, but the silence inside was absolute. It was 3 a.m, the hour of the wolf. I was awake, sitting in the dark of my master bedroom watching the monitors. I knew they would come back. Desperation is a predictable fuel. It burns hot and it burns fast and it makes people do things that are insane. Hunter had lost his job. He had lost his home. He had lost his reputation. And now, thanks to Dr. Aris, he knew that the pregnancy lie had failed. He was a cornered animal, and cornered animals bite. I saw him on the terrace camera first. He had climbed over from the adjacent balcony, a dangerous maneuver 12 stories up in the rain. He was dressed in black, but he moved with the clumsiness of an amateur. He fumbled with the lock on the sliding glass door. He did not know that the glass was reinforced or that the lock was a decoy. He pried at it with a crowbar he must have stolen from a construction site. Then I saw the glint of metal in his other hand. It was a knife. A long, serrated hunting knife. My breath caught in my throat. This was no longer a family dispute. This was no longer about rent or eviction. This was an armed home invasion. My son-in-law was not coming to beg. He was coming to take. He was coming to hurt me. He had convinced himself that I was the villain, that I was hoarding wealth that belonged to him, and he was going to cut it out of me if he had to. I watched him struggle with the door. He was sweating despite the cold rain. His face was a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. He looked like a man possessed. He finally managed to pop the track of the door. It was a weakness I had left intentionally, a funnel to guide an intruder exactly where I wanted him to go. Hunter stepped into the living room. He was dripping wet. He wiped the rain from his eyes and gripped the knife tighter. He looked around the dark apartment. He saw the shadows of the expensive furniture. He saw the art on the walls. He probably saw dollar signs. But mostly he was looking for the bedroom. He was looking for the old man he thought was asleep and vulnerable. He moved slowly across the marble floor, his wet sneakers squeaking softly. He was breathing hard, loud, raspy breaths that echoed in the silence. I sat perfectly still in my chair in the bedroom watching him on the monitor. I was not afraid. I felt a deep, profound sadness. This was the boy who had married my daughter. This was the man who had promised to protect her. And now he was creeping through my house with a weapon, intending to end the life of the man who had fed him for 3 years. He reached the hallway. He paused outside my bedroom door. He listened. He heard nothing. He thought I was asleep. He reached for the door handle. I tightened my grip on the remote control in my hand. I had been an electrician for 40 years. I knew everything there was to know about circuits, currents, and resistance. I knew how to wire a house to be warm and welcoming, and I knew how to wire a house to defend itself. When I moved into the penthouse, I had made some modifications. I had installed a localized deterrent system on the master bedroom door. It was a high-voltage, low-amperage circuit connected directly to the brass handle. It was non-lethal, but it was designed to drop a grown man to his knees instantly. Hunter put his hand on the brass knob. He turned it slowly, trying to be quiet. I pressed the button on the remote. The sound was a sharp, loud crack like a whip breaking the sound barrier. A blue spark arc flashed in the darkness of the hallway, visible even under the crack of the door. Hunter did not scream. He did not have time to scream. His muscles contracted violently. The electricity surged through his hand, up his arm, and slammed into his chest, seizing his entire nervous system in a millisecond of pure white-hot shock. He flew backward as if he had been kicked by a mule. The knife went flying from his hand, clattering across the marble floor and sliding under a console table. Hunter hit the opposite wall with a sickening thud and slid to the floor. He was convulsing his body, twitching uncontrollably as the residual current dissipated. I stood up. I walked to the door and unlocked it manually. I opened it. Hunter was lying on the rug, gasping for air, his eyes wide and unfocused. He was drooling. He looked up at me and tried to move, but his limbs were heavy and unresponsive. He looked at me with terror. He realized in that moment that he was not the hunter. He was the prey. I stood over him. I did not have a weapon. I did not need one. I was the master of this domain. "Hello, Hunter," I said, my voice calm and low. "You seem shocked to see me." He tried to speak, but only a groan came out. He looked at his hand, which was red and blistering. "I warned you," I said. "I told you I was an electrician. You thought that meant I changed light bulbs. You forgot that I control the power. You walked into my house with a knife, Hunter. You came here to kill me." He shook his head weakly, trying to deny it, but his eyes darted toward the place where the knife had fallen. "Do not bother," I said. "It is gone, and so is your freedom." I looked down at him with zero pity. He had crossed the final line. There was no going back from this. There was no family meeting that could fix this. This was a felony. This was the end of his life as a free man. "You wanted my money," I said. "You wanted my life. Now you have nothing. You are lying on the floor of a house you can never afford, paralyzed by a man you thought was beneath you." I stepped over him. I walked to the living room and turned on the lights. The sudden brightness was blinding. Hunter groaned again, shielding his eyes. The silence of the apartment was broken by the sound of sirens wailing in the distance. They were getting louder fast. "You did not trigger a silent alarm," Hunter rasped, his voice coming back slowly. "I cut the wires," I laughed. "You cut the phone line, Hunter. This is the 21st century. The system is cellular. It alerted the police the second you stepped onto the terrace. They have been watching you for 10 minutes. They saw you break the door. They saw the knife." He started to cry. It was the weeping of a coward who realizes the walls have closed in. "Please, Nelson," he sobbed, trying to sit up. "Please do not let them take me. I was desperate. I was not going to hurt you. I just wanted to scare you." "You brought a knife," I said. "You do not bring a knife to scare someone. You bring a knife to silence them." The sirens stopped abruptly outside the building. That meant they were here. They were in the lobby. I walked to the front door of the apartment. I looked through the peephole. The elevator dinged. The doors slid open. 6 police officers in tactical gear poured into the hallway. They had their weapons drawn. They moved with precision. "Police, show me your hands," one of them shouted. I opened the door. I held my hands up, palms open. "I am the homeowner," I said. "The intruder is in the hallway. He is incapacitated. He is unarmed now, but the knife is under the table." 2 officers pushed past me. They found Hunter trying to crawl away. They were on him in a second. They pinned him to the ground. They cuffed his hands behind his back. Hunter screamed in pain as the metal clicked shut on his burned wrists. Another officer approached me. "Mr. King, are you injured?" "No," I said. "I am fine. But there is someone else." The officer looked at me. "Who?" "The lookout," I said. "He did not come alone. He is too cowardly to do this alone. Check the stairwell." "Or the lobby." The officer radioed downstairs. "Check the perimeter. Look for an accomplice." A moment later, the radio crackled back. "We have a female in the fire escape on the 10th floor. She was trying to run down. We have her in custody." I closed my eyes. Vanessa. She had stood outside while her husband broke in to rob and possibly murder her father. She had waited in the cold, hoping he would come out with bags of cash. "Bring them both," I said. "I want to see them." They dragged Hunter out first. He was weeping openly, begging for mercy, begging for his father, begging for me. I watched him go without saying a word. Then they brought Vanessa. She was handcuffed. Her hoodie was torn. She looked wild. She saw me standing in the doorway of the penthouse, warm and safe. "Daddy," she screamed. "Daddy, tell them. Tell them it was a mistake. We were just coming to talk." "You do not talk with a crowbar and a knife, Vanessa," I said. She lunged toward me, but the officer held her back. "You cannot let us go to prison," she shrieked. "I am your daughter." "You are an accomplice to attempted armed robbery," I said. "And you are a stranger to me." The officer looked at me. "Do you want to press charges, sir?" I looked at my daughter. I looked at the hate and the greed that had consumed her. I realized that prison was the only place where she couldn't hurt anyone else. "Yes," I said. "I want to press charges, to the fullest extent of the law." They took her away. Her screams echoed in the stairwell long after the heavy fire door slammed shut. I stood alone in my hallway. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me tired and old. But I was alive. I was safe. And the cancer that had been eating at my life for years had finally been cut out. I went back inside. I poured the rest of the scotch down the sink. I did not need it. I needed clarity. I needed to prepare for the final act, because the police were just the beginning. The real judgment was coming in the courtroom, and I was going to be the executioner. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee. It was a smell I had always associated with traffic tickets and zoning permits, but today it smelled like the end of the world. I sat in the front row of the gallery, directly behind the prosecutor. I wore my best suit, the navy blue wool blend that cost $3,000. I sat with my back straight and my hands folded in my lap. I was the victim. I was the witness. And I was the father who was about to watch his family get dismantled by the state. Vanessa and Hunter were brought in through the side door. They were wearing orange jumpsuits. The bright synthetic fabric clashed horribly with their pale, exhausted faces. They had been in county jail for 3 weeks, unable to make bail because they had no assets and no one willing to sign for them. They looked thinner. Hunter had a black eye that was fading to yellow, likely a souvenir from a cellmate who did not appreciate his attitude. Vanessa looked like a ghost. Her hair was limp and greasy. She kept her head down, refusing to look at the gallery where her former friends and neighbors were watching. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. The video of the break-in, the police testimony, the knife found under the table, the crowbar, the confession tapes from the hospital. It was an open and shut case of felony breaking and entering, attempted robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. But the drama was not in the facts. It was in the desperation. When Vanessa took the stand, she did not look at the jury. She looked at me. She stared at me with wide, watery eyes, trying to establish a connection, trying to reignite the fatherly instinct she had exploited for years. "Please state your name," the prosecutor said. "Vanessa Hughes," she whispered. She began her testimony. It was not a defense. It was an assassination. She threw Hunter to the wolves. She claimed he forced her. She claimed she was a battered wife, terrified of his temper. She claimed she waited in the stairwell because she was trying to get help, not because she was a lookout. It was all his idea, she sobbed. Hunter told me my father had millions. He said we were owed that money. He said if I did not help him get it, he would leave me. I was scared. I did not want to hurt my daddy. I love my daddy. Hunter jumped up from the defense table. "You liar," he screamed. "You liar. It was your idea. You said he was holding out. You said he owed us for the house. You told me to bring the knife." "Order," the judge banged his gavel. "Restrain the defendant." The bailiff pushed Hunter back into his seat. Hunter was panting, his face red. He looked at Vanessa with pure hatred. The lovebirds who had schemed together were now tearing each other apart like rats in a bucket. Vanessa continued to cry. She painted herself as the victim of a manipulative husband and a misunderstanding father. She begged for mercy. She begged for probation. She said she wanted to go to nursing school. She said she wanted to make her father proud. It was a good performance. If I did not know better, I might have believed it. But I remembered the sandwich. I remembered her refusing to eat leftovers when she claimed she was starving. I remembered her kicking my clothes into the rain. Then it was my turn. The bailiff called my name, Nelson King. I walked to the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible. I swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor walked me through the night of the break-in. I described the sound of the glass breaking. I described seeing Hunter with the knife. I described the fear I felt, not for my money, but for my life. Mr. King, the defense attorney, stood up. He was a court-appointed lawyer, overworked and underpaid. He looked tired. "Mr. King, is it not true that you baited your family? You flaunted your wealth. You cut them off abruptly, knowing they were desperate. Did you not create the circumstances that led to this tragedy? I looked at the lawyer. I did not bait them, I said calmly. I stopped enabling them. There is a difference. I stopped paying for a lifestyle they could not afford. I stopped letting them abuse my generosity. If that is bait, then every parent who tells their child no is guilty of entrapment. The lawyer tried to argue that the electric shock system was a booby trap designed to cause harm. It is a security system. I corrected him. It is designed to stop intruders. It worked perfectly. If my son-in-law had knocked on the door like a civilized human being instead of breaking it down with a crowbar, he would not have been shocked. The jury nodded. They were working-class people. They understood the sanctity of a man home. They understood that you do not break into a house at 3 a.m. unless you mean to do harm. Finally, the testimony ended. The closing arguments were made. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty, on all counts. The judge called the defendants to stand for sentencing. Hunter stood up shaking. Vanessa stood up trembling so hard she had to lean on the table. Hunter Hughes, the judge said, "For the crimes of felony burglary, armed assault, and attempted extortion, I sentence you to 8 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole in 5 years." Hunter's knees buckled. The bailiff held him up. 8 years. His life as he knew it was over. He would come out a middle-aged man with a felony record and no skills. The judge turned to Vanessa. "Vanessa Hughes," the judge said, "your role was secondary but significant. You were an accomplice to a violent felony. You facilitated the crime. However, the court takes into account your lack of prior criminal history." Vanessa looked hopeful. She looked at me. She smiled a tiny, wobbling smile. She thought she was going to walk. She thought Daddy was going to save her. Before I passed sentence, the judge said, looking over his glasses at me, "Mr. King, as the victim and the father of the defendant, do you have a statement? Do you wish to ask the court for leniency regarding your daughter?" The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned to me. This was the moment. This was the climax of the movie Vanessa had been playing in her head. This was where the benevolent father stood up, wiped away a tear, and begged the judge to give his little girl a second chance. She expected me to pay her bail. She expected me to hire an expensive appeal lawyer. She expected to be rescued because that was all she had ever known. I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. I looked at Vanessa. I looked deep into her eyes. I searched for the daughter I had raised. I searched for the little girl who used to make me cards on Father's Day. I searched for the humanity I had hoped was still there, buried under layers of entitlement. I saw nothing. I saw a stranger. I saw a woman who would sell me for a handbag. I saw a woman who had watched her husband pick up a knife and said nothing. I turned to the judge. "Your Honor." I said, my voice steady and clear, "I am looking for my daughter in this courtroom. I have looked for her for weeks." Vanessa sobbed. "Daddy, I am right here." I ignored her. "My daughter was a sweet girl," I continued. "She was kind. She was grateful. She knew right from wrong. But that girl died, Your Honor. She died on the night she threw my clothes into the mud and told me to get out. She died when she tried to sue me for abandonment. She died when she lied about an unborn child to get money." A gasp went through the gallery. "The woman standing before you," I said, pointing at Vanessa, "is a stranger. She shares my DNA, but she does not share my heart. She is a predator who sees people as resources. She is a danger to herself and to others because she believes the world owes her a living. If you let her go, she will find another victim. She will find another old man to leech off of. She will find another lie to tell." "Daddy, no!" Vanessa screamed. "Stop it! You are killing me!" "I am not killing you," I said. "I am burying the memory of you." I looked at the judge. "I ask for no leniency, Your Honor. I ask for justice. Give her the sentence she earned. Teach her the lesson I failed to teach her. Teach her that actions have consequences." I sat down. Vanessa wailed. It was a primal sound of total abandonment. She realized finally that the bridge was not just burned, it was nuked. The judge nodded slowly. "Very well," the judge said. "Vanessa Hughes, I sentence you to 4 years in state prison, followed by 3 years of strict probation. You will also be required to pay restitution for the damages to the victim property." The gavel banged. It was the sound of a stone sealing a tomb. Vanessa collapsed. She fell to the floor, screaming my name. Hunter stared at the wall, catatonic. The bailiffs moved in. They picked Vanessa up off the floor. They cuffed her hands behind her back. I watched as they dragged her away. She looked at me one last time before she disappeared through the door to the holding cells. Her eyes were full of hate, pure, unadulterated hate. Good, I thought. Hate is honest. Hate is real. It was better than the fake love she had given me for years. I stood up. I walked out of the courtroom. The reporters were waiting in the hall. The cameras flashed. "Mr. King, do you have a comment?" one reporter shouted. "How does it feel to send your own daughter to prison?" I stopped. I looked at the camera. "It feels like taking out the trash," I said. I walked past them. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright afternoon sun. The air smelled of freedom. It smelled of a future that belonged only to me. I got into my truck. I did not look back. I drove to the marina. I had a boat to catch. The legal war was over. The emotional war was over. I had cut the cancer out of my life. It left a scar, yes. A deep, jagged scar that would probably never fully heal. But a scar is better than a tumor. A scar means you survived. I drove with the windows down. I let the wind hit my face. I thought about Vanessa sitting in a cell wearing orange. I felt a pang of grief, but it was distant, like a memory of a pain I used to have. I had done my duty. I had raised her. I had fed her. I had housed her. And when she tried to destroy me, I had stopped her. That is what fathers do. They protect their families, even if it means protecting them from themselves. And sometimes the best way to protect your legacy is to make sure it ends with you. The courtroom smelled of floor wax and stale coffee, a smell I had always associated with traffic tickets and zoning permits. But today it smelled like the end of the world. I sat in the front row of the gallery directly behind the prosecutor. I wore my best suit, the navy blue wool blend that cost $3,000. I sat with my back straight and my hands folded in my lap. I was the victim. I was the witness. And I was the father who was about to watch his family get dismantled by the state. Vanessa and Hunter were brought in through the side door. They were wearing orange jumpsuits. The bright synthetic fabric clashed horribly with their pale, exhausted faces. They had been in county jail for 3 weeks, unable to make bail because they had no assets and no one willing to sign for them. They looked thinner. Hunter had a black eye that was fading to yellow, likely a souvenir from a cellmate who did not appreciate his attitude. Vanessa looked like a ghost. Her hair was limp and greasy. She kept her head down, refusing to look at the gallery where her former friends and neighbors were watching. The trial was short. The evidence was overwhelming. The video of the break-in, the police testimony, the knife found under the table, the crowbar, the confession tapes from the hospital. It was an open and shut case of felony breaking and entering, attempted robbery, and assault with a deadly weapon. But the drama was not in the facts. It was in the desperation. When Vanessa took the stand, she did not look at the jury. She looked at me. She stared at me with wide, watery eyes, trying to establish a connection, trying to reignite the fatherly instinct she had exploited for years. "Please state your name," the prosecutor said. "Vanessa Hughes," she whispered. She began her testimony. It was not a defense. It was an assassination. She threw Hunter to the wolves. She claimed he forced her. She claimed she was a battered wife terrified of his temper. She claimed she waited in the stairwell because she was trying to get help, not because she was a lookout. It was all his idea, she sobbed. "Hunter told me my father had millions. He said we were owed that money. He said if I did not help him get it, he would leave me. I was scared. I did not want to hurt my daddy. I love my daddy." Hunter jumped up from the defense table. "You liar," he screamed. "You liar. It was your idea. You said he was holding out. You said he owed us for the house. You told me to bring the knife." Order the judge banged his gavel. Restrain the defendant. The bailiff pushed Hunter back into his seat. Hunter was panting, his face red. He looked at Vanessa with pure hatred. The lovebirds who had schemed together were now tearing each other apart like rats in a bucket. Vanessa continued to cry. She painted herself as the victim of a manipulative husband and a misunderstanding father. She begged for mercy. She begged for probation. She said she wanted to go to nursing school. She said she wanted to make her father proud. It was a good performance. If I did not know better, I might have believed it. But I remembered the sandwich. I remembered her refusing to eat leftovers when she claimed she was starving. I remembered her kicking my clothes into the rain. Then it was my turn. The bailiff called my name, Nelson King. I walked to the stand. I placed my hand on the Bible. I swore to tell the truth. The prosecutor walked me through the night of the break-in. I described the sound of the glass breaking. I described seeing Hunter with the knife. I described the fear I felt not for my money but for my life. Mr. King, the defense attorney, stood up. He was a court-appointed lawyer, overworked and underpaid. He looked tired. Mr. King, is it not true that you baited your family? You flaunted your wealth. You cut them off abruptly, knowing they were desperate. Did you not create the circumstances that led to this tragedy? I looked at the lawyer. I did not bait them, I said calmly. I stopped enabling them. There is a difference. I stopped paying for a lifestyle they could not afford. I stopped letting them abuse my generosity. If that is bait, then every parent who tells their child no is guilty of entrapment. The lawyer tried to argue that the electric shock system was a booby trap designed to cause harm. It is a security system, I corrected him. It is designed to stop intruders. It worked perfectly. If my son-in-law had knocked on the door like a civilized human being instead of breaking it down with a crowbar, he would not have been shocked. The jury nodded. They were working-class people. They understood the sanctity of a man home. They understood that you do not break into a house at 3 in the morning unless you mean to do harm. Finally, the testimony ended. The closing arguments were made. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge called the defendants to stand for sentencing. Hunter stood up shaking. Vanessa stood up trembling so hard she had to lean on the table. Hunter Hughes, the judge said, for the crimes of felony burglary, armed assault, and attempted extortion, I sentence you to 8 years in state prison. You will be eligible for parole in 5 years. Hunter's knees buckled. The bailiff held him up. 8 years. His life as he knew it was over. He would come out a middle-aged man with a felony record and no skills. The judge turned to Vanessa. Vanessa Hughes, the judge said, your role was secondary but significant. You were an accomplice to a violent felony. You facilitated the crime. However, the court takes into account your lack of prior criminal history. Vanessa looked hopeful. She looked at me. She smiled a tiny wobbling smile. She thought she was going to walk. She thought Daddy was going to save her. Before I passed sentence, the judge said, looking over his glasses at me, Mr. King, as the victim and the father of the defendant, do you have a statement? Do you wish to ask the court for leniency regarding your daughter? The courtroom went silent. Every eye turned to me. This was the moment. This was the climax of the movie Vanessa had been playing in her head. This was where the benevolent father stood up, wiped away a tear, and begged the judge to give his little girl a second chance. She expected me to pay her bail. She expected me to hire an expensive appeal lawyer. She expected to be rescued because that was all she had ever known. I stood up. I buttoned my suit jacket. I looked at Vanessa. I looked deep into her eyes. I searched for the daughter I had raised. I searched for the little girl who used to make me cards on Father's Day. I searched for the humanity I had hoped was still there, buried under layers of entitlement. I saw nothing. I saw a stranger. I saw a woman who would sell me for a handbag. I saw a woman who had watched her husband pick up a knife and said nothing. I turned to the judge. Your Honor, I said, my voice steady and clear, I am looking for my daughter in this courtroom. I have looked for her for weeks. Vanessa sobbed. Daddy, I am right here. I ignored her. My daughter was a sweet girl, I continued. She was kind. She was grateful. She knew right from wrong. But that girl died, Your Honor. She died on the night she threw my clothes into the mud and told me to get out. She died when she tried to sue me for abandonment. She died when she lied about an unborn child to get money. A gasp went through the gallery. The woman standing before you, I said, pointing at Vanessa, is a stranger. She shares my DNA, but she does not share my heart. She is a predator who sees people as resources. She is a danger to herself and to others because she believes the world owes her a living. If you let her go, she will find another victim. She will find another old man to leech off of. She will find another lie to tell. Daddy, no, Vanessa screamed. Stop it. You are killing me. I am not killing you, I said. I am burying the memory of you. I looked at the judge. I ask for no leniency, Your Honor. I ask for justice. Give her the sentence she earned. Teach her the lesson I failed to teach her. Teach her that actions have consequences. I sat down. Vanessa wailed. It was a primal sound of total abandonment. She realized finally that the bridge was not just burned, it was nuked. The judge nodded slowly. "Very well," the judge said. "Vanessa Hughes, I sentence you to 4 years in state prison followed by 3 years of strict probation. You will also be required to pay restitution for the damages to the victim property." The gavel banged. It was the sound of a stone sealing a tomb. Vanessa collapsed. She fell to the floor, screaming my name. Hunter stared at the wall, catatonic. The bailiffs moved in. They picked Vanessa up off the floor. They cuffed her hands behind her back. I watched as they dragged her away. She looked at me one last time before she disappeared through the door to the holding cells. Her eyes were full of hate. Pure, unadulterated hate. Good, I thought. Hate is honest. Hate is real. It was better than the fake love she had given me for years. I stood up. I walked out of the courtroom. The reporters were waiting in the hall. The cameras flashed. "Mr. King, do you have a comment?" one reporter shouted. "How does it feel to send your own daughter to prison?" I stopped. I looked at the camera. "It feels like taking out the trash," I said. I walked past them. I walked out of the courthouse and into the bright afternoon sun. The air smelled of freedom. It smelled of a future that belonged only to me. I got into my truck. I did not look back. I drove to the marina. I had a boat to catch. The legal war was over. The emotional war was over. I had cut the cancer out of my life. It left a scar, yes. A deep, jagged scar that would probably never fully heal. But a scar is better than a tumor. A scar means you survived. I drove with the windows down. I let the wind hit my face. I thought about Vanessa sitting in a cell wearing orange. I felt a pang of grief, but it was distant, like a memory of a pain I used to have. I had done my duty. I had raised her. I had fed her. I had housed her. And when she tried to destroy me, I had stopped her. That is what fathers do. They protect their families, even if it means protecting them from themselves. And sometimes the best way to protect your legacy is to make sure it ends with you. The Atlantic Ocean is a different kind of blue than the sky over Elm Street. It is deeper and cleaner. It holds secrets without judging them. I sat on the aft deck of the Seawolf, a 40-foot yacht that I had chartered for the week. The Miami sun was warm on my face, a stark contrast to the cold rain that had soaked me 6 months ago. The air smelled of salt and sunscreen and freedom. I was not alone. Sitting across from me were Sam and Mike. Sam was a bricklayer with hands the size of shovels and a back that was permanently bent from 40 years of laying foundations. Mike was a plumber who had crawled through more crawl spaces than a rat. We had started our businesses together in the 80s. We had shared cheap coffee in freezing vans. We had loaned each other tools and money when times were lean. We were the men who built the city that people like Hunter and Vanessa wanted to rule. Sam took a sip of his beer and looked out at the horizon. "You look good, Nelson," Sam said. "You look like a man who finally put down a heavy load." I smiled. I felt lighter. The weight of the secret I had carried for years was gone. The weight of my daughter expectation was gone. "I feel good, Sam," I said. "It took me a long time to get here." Mike laughed. He pointed his cigar at me. "You took the scenic route, but you made it, and you did it with style. I still watch that video of the eviction when I need a pick-me-up. It is a masterpiece." We laughed together. It was a genuine sound. There was no pretense here. We did not need to impress each other with vintage wines or designer names. We knew who we were. We were men who measured our worth by the calluses on our hands and the integrity of our word. The yacht cut through the waves, leaving a white wake behind us. It was a line drawn in the water separating the past from the present. I looked at my friends. They were old now. Their hair was gray. Their movements were slower. But their eyes were bright. They were happy. They had raised families that respected them. They had built lives that were solid. I had failed in raising Vanessa. I accepted that now. But I had succeeded in building myself. And sitting here surrounded by men who would give me the shirts off their backs, I realized that I was not alone. I had a family. It just wasn't the one I was born with or the one I raised. It was the one I chose. "Excuse me, gentlemen," I said, standing up. "I have one last piece of business to attend to." I walked to the railing. I pulled my smartphone from my pocket. It was the new phone, the one with the private number only my lawyer and my friends knew. I opened the banking app. The balance on the screen was substantial, but there was one specific sub-account that I was looking at. It held exactly $700,000. The proceeds from the sale of the house on Elm Street. I stared at the number. To Vanessa and Hunter, that number represented salvation. It represented luxury cars and first-class tickets. It represented a life they felt they were owed. To me, it represented a failure. It was money earned from a bad investment. It was money tainted by their greed and their lies. I did not want it. I did not need it. My investment portfolio generated more than that in interest every quarter. But I could not just keep it. It felt heavy in my digital wallet. It needed to go somewhere where it would do good, somewhere where it would be appreciated. I thought of my wife, Esther. She had passed away 12 years ago. She was a woman of infinite patience and kindness. She had loved Vanessa fiercely, but she had also valued hard work. She was a teacher who spent her own money on supplies for her students. She believed that education was the only ladder that mattered. I tapped the screen. I opened the transfer portal. I typed in the account number for a trust I had established last week with Sullivan Help, the Esther King Memorial Scholarship Fund. I looked at the description I had written. For students from underprivileged backgrounds seeking certification in electrical, plumbing, or carpentry trades, applicants must demonstrate financial need and a willingness to work. I smiled. Vanessa would have hated it. She looked down on trade schools. She thought people who worked with their hands were second-class citizens. She wanted to be an influencer. She wanted to be famous for being famous. Now her inheritance was going to pay for welding torches and circuit breakers. It was going to pay for work boots and safety glasses. It was going to create a new generation of men and women who knew how to build things instead of just destroying them. I typed in the amount. $700,000. I hovered my finger over the confirm button. I thought about the house on Elm Street. I thought about the memories I had tried to build there. They were gone now, replaced by the memory of the eviction. But this money would build hundreds of futures. It would buy tools for a kid in Detroit. It would pay tuition for a girl in Atlanta who wanted to be a master electrician. I pressed the button. Transfer complete. The money was gone. It vanished from my account and reappeared in the future of strangers. I felt a physical sensation of relief. It was as if I had finally exhaled a breath I had been holding for 3 years. The house was truly gone now. It was not just sold, it was transmuted into hope. I put the new phone back in my pocket. Then I reached into my other pocket. I pulled out an old cracked smartphone. It was an ancient model, the screen held together with tape. This was the phone I had used when I lived in the basement. This was the number Vanessa had. This was the number Hunter had called to scream at me. This was the number that had received the text demanding rent. I looked at it. It was silent now. The service had been canceled, but it still held the ghosts of their voices. It held the voicemail where Vanessa lied about being pregnant. It held the texts where Hunter threatened to sue me. It was a museum of pain. I looked at the ocean. The water was deep and blue and endless. It was the perfect place to bury the past. I did not say a prayer. I did not make a speech. I just reared back and threw it. The phone spun through the air. It caught the sunlight for a brief second, a piece of plastic and glass that had caused so much misery. It hit the water 50 yards out. There was a tiny splash, a white ripple, and then it was gone, sinking down to the bottom of the Atlantic to rest among the coral and the sand. I watched the spot where it had vanished. I waited for a feeling of regret. I waited to feel sad about cutting the last line of communication to my child. But I felt nothing, just the wind, just the sun, just the peace of a man who has done his duty and paid his debts. I turned back to my friends. Sam was opening a new bottle of wine. It was a bottle of Cabernet Sauvignon, the same vintage I had ordered at the restaurant the night I exposed myself. But this time I was drinking it with people who knew its value, not its price. "Hey, Nelson," Mike called out. "You okay over there? You look like you just buried a body." I laughed. I walked back to the table. I sat down and took the glass Sam offered me. "Not a body," I said. "Just a ghost." I raised the glass. The wine was dark and rich, swirling in the crystal. I looked at my friends. I looked at the yacht. I looked at the life I had reclaimed. "To freedom," I said. Sam and Mike raised their glasses. "To freedom," Sam said. "To the good life," Mike added. We clinked glasses. The sound was pure and clear like a bell ringing in a new era. I took a sip. It tasted like victory. I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, listening to the sound of the ocean. I was Nelson King. I was a master electrician. I was a millionaire. I was a man who had walked through the fire and come out the other side without burning. My daughter was in prison learning the hard way, my son-in-law was a felon learning humility, and I was here in the sun finally living the life I had earned. The storm was over. The clouds had parted, and the horizon was nothing but blue. This journey taught me that blood is not a binding contract. You cannot buy class, and you certainly cannot inherit dignity. My daughter spent her life chasing a lifestyle she hadn't earned, believing that treating people like stepping stones was the path to the top. She was wrong. True wealth isn't the balance in your bank account or the brand of your car. It's the peace of mind that comes from living with integrity. I learned that sometimes the most loving thing a parent can do is stop shielding their children from the consequences of their own cruelty and let them fall so they might finally learn how to stand. If you found satisfaction in seeing justice served, please hit the like button and subscribe for more stories of truth and retribution. And tell me in the comments, have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member to save yourself? I read every single one. Until next time.